Ladies and gentlemen and non-binary buds, it's me, it's AJP, and I am the heart of wrestling discourse here on YouTube.com, the man that gravity forgot, Andos for short, and I am joined here tonight by the soul of wrestling discourse here on YouTube.com, the Pirate Prince, CherryChase. How are you doing tonight, my good man?
What is up? Also, you forgot I am the pretentious prince of YouTube. Okay?
Alright, I got you. I tried to fit to the motif of one of your favorite wrestlers in NXT, so I tried to make it work there.
I like that. No, it's good. It's clever.
Kind of before we get into the list, I kind of wanted to do some general topics before we get into the list proper. And ever since I started this channel, I've always wanted to do a video on NXT. And earlier this year, we were both in a Discord call with Chris. Shoutouts to Chris O'Brien, by the way.
The man.
We were both talking about how we both wanted to do an NXT retrospective. And I thought to myself, there might be something there.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to do it with you, because I think we both are pretty skewered when it comes to our wrestling knowledge, at least, to being more WWE centric.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I remember it was Nova on Twitter, and shout out to that dude too. Gotta watch his content.
Hell of a guy.
Yes, he was asking about what like wrestlers you needed to watch more of, and I listed like 10 off the top of my head, and he was like, "Wow, these are all my like greatest wrestlers ever picks." Almost his exact top 10.
I actually remember there was a post on Twitter where it was like, rank your wrestling knowledge, and I was like a 2.
Yeah, I was generous with my 3. I was like, I don't know. When I saw Nova and Joseph both put 5s, I was like, okay, clearly I did something wrong.
It's so weird too, because it's like Nova was making lists on like French wrestling, like the best wrestling in 1970. And if he's giving himself a 5, I'm like a -5 in that sense.
Well, it's never even crossed my mind to go back to that.
Right. Like the only French wrestling I know is Andre the Giant, and that's it.
He's the one guy. He's holding up the flag for us. So of course, when we decide to finally give a big, wide coverage, a good retrospective, we pick fucking WWE.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's the promotion that everyone at one time kind of preferred over everything else. Like, everyone was talking about NXT at one point.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just thought it would be kind of fun to, like, go back, talk about what matches we hadn't seen in years, see if they held up, and kind of just, like, analyze them. So, some general topics to go over before we start. What was the process and criteria that you had to watch matches? Like, did you watch every takeover? Did you go through other lists that people did? How many matches did you end up doing for the retrospective?
So in total, I checked out 75 matches in full. And then the farther along I got watching through things, and just we both started getting farther along in our process, there's just matches where you get like halfway through and you're like, it's not even gonna make the back end of the list. So I didn't even count what matches I didn't finish.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was going through Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly at Takeover Stand and Deliver, and I was 10 minutes in, and I was like, how fucking long is this? And it's like 40 minutes.
Right.
Like, I was like, tapping out.
I can't. I was like, I need the energy coming off work to just get through everything else. I don't have time to waste watching the rest of this stuff. So it's amazing. I even watched well, I won't say that. I don't want to spoil the list yet.
Right. Because like this is a project that's taken us a long while. Like, we think we started talking about this in like April or March.
Yeah, it was just kind of an idea, like, oh, we can do that eventually, work out the kinks sort of thing, and then at some point we just got serious about it. I don't even remember how that came up.
So my criteria was basically 75 matches, just like you. It ended up being way more because I kind of wanted to dive into 2020 and 2021. Some matches in general, like, I just couldn't watch because I was just like, is this really going to be in my list? Like, I had Adam Cole versus Ricochet versus Pete Dunne in an episode of NXT. And I'm like, is this really going to make the list?
Yeah.
Here's some random triple threat for the North American title.
Yeah, I had so many of those. It's hard to even like recount certain ones. Where I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this. I'm having a good time, but I got about halfway in and I'm just like, it's just it's not excelling on any particular level for me. So I'm just gonna say I have more stuff I have to watch that I know is probably gonna make my list. So I just have to tap out.
Right. And we'll mention that when we get to our honorable mentions. But next up, I guess we kind of went over this a bit, but what was your first experience with NXT? Like first takeover, first match? When did you personally get into it?
I got into it back when it was a game show. Those were the days.
Well, the good old "What's a Mustache" promo?
Yes. No, my favorite is the Michael McGillicuddy. What does he say? He cuts experience with the NXT we're going to be talking about. That must have been, oh man. Because I know I didn't get into it when it was first starting up. I feel like it must have been around the Bayley Sasha era. That was like some of my earliest memories. Was the discourse around women's wrestling and NXT being a catalyst to that for WWE. Because back then I was only really watching like mainline stuff, like the Raws and the SmackDowns, and even those I was like on and off with. So I remember they all sort of debuted. They had Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky all debut, and I had no idea who these people were, but they were getting a reaction, and that kind of led me to check out what NXT was at this point.
Yeah, I remember that episode of Raw too, because I think it was Stephanie McMahon, of course it's Stephanie McMahon, who came out and was like, here's a bunch of women's wrestlers, and everyone was losing their minds over Sasha Banks and Charlotte and Becky Lynch.
Yes.
Like, oh, there's something here.
Exactly.
I think a couple months later was that match.
Oh, was it after? Yeah, the timeline is always sketchy, but that was, I remember.
Yeah, because she was still NXT, Sasha Banks was still NXT champion when she came on Raw.
Oh yeah, because they had like Neville and Sami Zayn have a tag match with like Tyler Breeze and someone else, and I was like, oh, what's this NXT thing? This sounds pretty cool.
I would say for me, I'll be honest, like, all that's true for me, too. I did watch a little bit of the game show. I watched a little bit of the Sami Zayn Adrian Neville match. And, like, that was like, oh my god, this brand is going crazy. I was like, okay, this is cool. But in terms of, like, actual, like, I'm in it, was TakeOver Dallas. That was my first TakeOver.
Oh, yeah.
I remember, like, really, really enjoying that show. Like, we'll get to it, but, like, all the matches were extremely solid. A lot of memorable stuff, and I was like, oh, this NXT thing's pretty cool. And it kind of like dipped out for a bit until like Asuka, like I would watch NXT for basically Asuka because I thought she was super fucking cool.
Based.
And yeah, it wasn't until I think like somewhere around 2017 when the Undisputed Era debuted that I got super hardcore, watched every single week, watched every single takeover. It was like my favorite thing in the world at that time.
Yeah, that sounds about the time when I was watching more NXT, because I definitely started watching, well, I guess NXT the show, because I was watching the takeovers pretty frequently before just watching the whole thing. And I do remember that I think Dallas might be the most vivid memory I have of just watching a show. So I want to say that's my first. That's the most I remember of just sitting down and having a reaction match to match. Because I think the thing that stood out to me at the time was when you'd watch like regular WWE pay-per-views, there was always like a handful of dull matches, and maybe if you're lucky and you're naive at the time, like there's going to be something there that excites you. And I remember that TakeOver Dallas was special because I had watched a little bit of New Japan, so I knew who Nakamura was, and he was the big draw to the show. But that was the show where at the time I liked every match on the card. I don't know if I had that experience myself up to that point.
Right.
The tag matches were cool and didn't suck.
And one thing too is it was short. Like there was like 5 matches, all of them were good to great, and it was like, is this a WWE program? Like, this doesn't feel right. There's like comedy gimmicks and shit in WWE. What's going on here? You know, it was so like alien to me because like I said, I'd never watched the Indies, never watched New Japan, and it was like, what is this? You know, it's funny because like Triple H, the thing about Triple H is like, there's a saying that goes like, greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing you it didn't exist. And that's how I feel like Triple H ran NXT.
Yeah, it was a whole different feeling than anything I was used to at the time. Even before knowing Triple H was involved, like you could tell from the structure of everything to who was getting over to just it feeling like every division to some extent mattered. That was something that was very different for me, was how cohesive the show felt as a whole. So when Triple H would come out and do those like rallies for everyone, like with the "We Are NXT" speeches he gave, like in that time period, They actually they felt a bit more earned than if Vince came out on Extreme Rules and decided to say, let's do this, we're together. It's like, I don't know.
Interesting that you bring that up too, because like it felt like every single year had that one standout division. So for like 2014, it's Sami Zayn chasing the NXT title. In 2015, it's Bayley chasing the women's title in the women's division. Then in 2016, it's all about the tag titles, with the Revival carrying the entire division and having just banger matches, and like each year was building upon a division.
Right.
Which like was kind of interesting, because if you watch WWE, the tag scene didn't matter, women's wrestling didn't matter. But seeing all that stuff kind of exist, like you said, cohesively and coherently, there's stakes and there's drama and there's a through line of A to Z in terms of like where the storyline goes. It's such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and I think it also is just helped a lot by the fact that it's just one show. You can prioritize everyone in a way more effective manner. Yeah, it's short. Like you're kind of forcing yourself to be concise. Like if the tag division is not hitting, then we've wasted like 15-ish minutes out of our show. Like that's time that we could have had anybody else go out there and shine.
Right. So going forward, was there a favorite takeover that you watched during the rewatch?
Off the top of my head, I mean, Dallas still stands up pretty well.
I love Dallas so much.
I think Chicago has a pretty fair fight for it.
Chicago 1 or 2?
I think the first one, maybe. Philadelphia was pretty strong overall. It had lots of fun matches.
A good show.
Maybe a couple of the Brooklyns too. It kind of varies. There was that period around like 17-8. I think 2017 might be my favorite year of NXT.
I was just about to say, yeah, in terms of like years, I'd say like of all the matches that I watched, even though like they all didn't make the list, 2017 had a lot of bangers. Like you had D.I.Y having an incredible run in the summer. You had the tag team stuff going on with like the Revival, the Authors of Pain, D.I.Y. You had Drew McIntyre coming back. You had the Undisputed Era debut. So much was happening in NXT, and it felt like such an important brand.
It gets going later. I appreciate it.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, after a while, I couldn't watch full takeovers, just trying to get through as much as I could for like a list.
See, I was different. Like I was so deep in, I don't want to miss something that everyone loves, but I might not like, or something that like everyone dislikes, but I might like. So like 2019, I kind of spent some time in. Going forward, was there any matches that surprised you? Matches you found yourself enjoying more than others, dislike more than others?
Yeah, I remember I put out a take somewhere within watching all of this where I had basically just said that American Alpha are better than D.I.Y. Which I will stand by that take in the sense that when I was rewatching their matches, I think their dynamic is far better for me than D.I.Y.'s is. Although D.I.Y. definitely has... It doesn't necessarily mean the matches from American Alpha are necessarily always better than theirs, but I feel like they click as a tag team in a way that I just don't like see as often.
Well, all I'm going to say is we'll just have to see about that.
Oh, we're going to see about it, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to defend this to the dying breath. I'm trying to like play between... Some of these I don't want to spoil for what actually ends up on the list.
Well, okay, so do you want to go into honorable mentions right now?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, I'll start real quick. So, honorable mention number 1, Cesaro versus William Regal from 12/25/2013 of NXT. So this is really early in my watch. I was reading Handwork Reviews talk about this match, and I was like, oh, I've never seen this, and he really, really liked it. And I watched it, and I'll be damned if it's not one of the best retirement matches I've ever seen.
Bar
it's so
none.
good.
Bar none.
It's so good. Like the way that... I think especially what makes that match work a lot, too, is the promo before the match.
Yep. Oh my god, it's...
Where it talks about, I used to be an entertainer, I used to be a man's man, and... You know, I kind of made some mistakes along the way, but that time has passed, and I need to be the best I can be to beat Cesaro, and such a good promo.
Having this stand as an honorable mention is actively killing me inside, but that's okay. We can roll with that.
It was hard. Like, that was one of the picks where it's like, oh man, it's gonna hurt me inside not putting it here.
Yeah, well, good luck, because you're already hurting me inside.
Okay, next up. Ooh, this one cut American Alpha versus the Revival, NXT Takeover The End. So I want to say this right off the bat, because I'm going to get into it in my list, but right off the bat, I really, really enjoyed the Revival American Alpha matches. Like, in terms of pure, this is how tag team works, these are the dynamic, these are what you do as a heel team, this is what you do as a babyface team. Absolutely, positively, like, the fundamentals, A+. I guess to me, and I'll get into it when I talk about it, but I think D.I.Y. So here's my stance on the Revival FTR. I think they're more interesting as a team when they take on teams that are kind of like unconventional compared to them, like D.I.Y., the Briscoes, and to like a lesser extent, the Young Bucks, where it's like not so much like old school dynamics, but a solid tag team understanding that the Revival can like break down and pick apart, and that's always make matches against like the Young Bucks, Briscoes, D.I.Y. more interesting to me. American Alpha is like they're basically the Steiners and the Rockers all rolled into one, an old school, take them out of 1985 NWA tag team. Like I said, great matches, but I think like the dynamics that the Revival play against other teams in NXT just kind of interested me more.
Okay, no, I can definitely see that. I almost want to say I don't disagree, but I don't. I guess I would say, I would say I don't disagree in the sense that like when they play up, like as they've, especially it helps that the longer they've gone on since those matches with American Alpha were so early in their career, that they've clearly evolved and gotten better as a tag team. So putting them in those more unique scenarios probably has now paved the way for them to have better matches.
Especially when it's like thrown together teams like D.I.Y, where it's like really good wrestler and another really good wrestler, like work with them, see what you can do.
No, yeah. And like if we were to go now and have like if Jason Jordan could actually wrestle and we had like a modern American Alpha versus Revival match, that would be super interesting.
Oh, it'd be good, yeah.
It's just, it can't happen for many reasons.
Right. All right, so next honorable mention, Hideo Itami. This one surprised me. Hideo Itami versus Bobby Roode, NXT TakeOver Chicago.
Oh man, dude.
I so badly wanted this on my list, but again, it's just a matter of like, so much good stuff I had to keep and had to cut. This match surprised me in the sense that like, I'm not really the biggest fan of Bobby Roode. I think he can be slow and plodding sometimes, but like going up against someone like Hideo Itami, he fucking brings it in this match. Like he really sells for Hideo.
He sells a lot for Hideo, but I think he plays a lot into like his strengths as like being able to like take a lot of pain from Itami, but he's like smarmy and almost like an edge sort of way where he's always like looking for an opportunity to work around somebody's move. But it's that like second leg that like really stood out to me. I was very impressed with his commitment to selling that arm. He really was. Like when he goes for the glorious DDT and he's like, God, like, that got me. Yeah, he couldn't do it. He tried to like switch over, but like it took too much time and Itami like counters around him. He's like trying to he does a pretty good job of wrestling with one arm for that last leg of the match. And I did not expect him to go that hard on selling the arm. And it was really, not inviting, I guess, it was just effective in pulling me way harder into the match, which Itami like goes to sell as well. I don't think he does it as convincingly. He works the leg
not as much as Bobby.
There's a couple spots near the end where you can tell he just wants like to pay off the moments, and I like the moments, but it sacrifices my investment with the selling. So it's mixed, but I think it does okay.
All right, so next honorable mention. Oh, this one fucking hurt. Asuka versus Nikki Cross, NXT, the last woman standing match, 6/28/17.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's basically just two really, really cool women beat the shit out of each other with kicks and neck breakers, and it's good. Like, it's just really good.
Asuka kicking her with the trash can on her head.
That fucking rules.
It's just a sweet little TV match. Like, you want to put it on, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's just not going to make the cut.
I've had so many Asuka, because like I had like 4 or 5 Asuka matches in my list, and I was like, if I get rid of one of them, it's probably going to be this one.
Yeah.
Alright, so next one. When I was making this list, I was so sure of myself this was going to be number 20, but when I went back to it, it kind of impressed me less and less. It's Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley, NXT, 12/18/2019. I think my problem with it was, I think I enjoy the moment more than the match. Like, there's some good stuff in this match with, like, Rhea Ripley grabbing the ref to be like, no, I'm still in this, I'm still in this. Like, everything else, it was fine.
Yeah, I think they played into Shayna's I think that, because I'm just not a big Rhea Ripley fan in general. I really struggle getting invested in her matches. So what I did appreciate is she leaned into her more like her tendencies as like a power wrestler and like a bit of a brawler. But I think it played really hard into her strengths, as it was one of the first times I've seen Shayna in her run where she seemed like legitimately scared she was going to lose, and she had to like pull out all the stops and was just trying to keep her like to the ground as much as possible. So that was a fun angle I enjoyed about the match.
But it was this like weird thing where her two tag team partners, Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke, are just ejected during commercial break, and it's like, you didn't even pay off that beat.
I legitimately just thought they were like passed out on the floor. I just like, oh yeah, I guess that shot to the head on the steel steps, I guess that was really effective because they have been out for a while.
All right, now my final honorable mention is Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor, NXT Takeover 31. So, this match is weird to me. So if you know me and like what I like in wrestling, this should totally like be up my alley. Lots of grapple fucking, lots of hard way blood, lots of stiff strikes.
Yep.
I think my thing is just I wish I liked it more, and I don't. You know, like it's that really solid like 3 3/4 star match.
Yeah.
That's like it's really good, but something about it just is holding me back, and I think it's the length.
Yeah,
it goes 30 minutes when it should go like maybe half that.
That's what I was gonna say, is like when I like think of that match, I think of like the moments that stood out to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. I'll put it on the list. But then when I look back at it, I just think to myself like, oh, when I have to watch the whole 30 minutes, I'm like, there's a lot of fluff here, and I really just I like that whatever percent of it that really does stand out.
Right, like the shot where Finn Balor hits Kyle O'Reilly in the kidneys. Oh my god, that is such a good spot. And like when Kyle O'Reilly busts his jaw open, that was really good too. Like that's the thing, like that's all I can remember that like really stood out, and everything else is like really solid, really crisp, really stiff. But, it's good, but I don't love it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not in love with it either.
So CherryChase, what are your honorable mentions?
My honorable mentions. Well, we already named Rude and Atami. That was one of mine. I have the North American ladder match. I understand the contentiousness of this. Every list I looked at just about had this match on it. And I was going into it a bit sour, but on my second rewatch, I was like, oh no, I'm liking this in the way I assumed I would. It's really hard to even tell what it is, but the longer it went on, I just got more and more emotionally disconnected from it.
Okay.
Especially in the third half. But those first two halves are excellent. I won't deny that, but I just couldn't, in good conscience, put a match where I just felt disconnected from for an entire half of it onto the list.
I get it, yeah. And to be fair, like, EC3 is kind of just there.
He has like, a couple fun spots, but
it compared to everything else.
Yeah. EC3 is always just kind of there.
His entire WWE run, kind of there.
It's true. That is true. And then I really wanted to put Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler on here. I'm not gonna lie, I really did, just because that ending is one of my favorite endings in any NXT match I watched. They wrapped two surprises into one, and it was quick enough that I got such a surge of adrenaline from that finish every time I watch it, but the rest of it is just like a really solid 7, you know? Like, I'm not enthralled by anything. It's a good time, it just, that ending peaks it.
It is a fantastic ending.
I had considered putting Gargano versus Ciampa, the second one, on my list.
Okay, that's very interesting you mentioned that. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
you're
I actually
good.
think I like the Chicago match more than the New Orleans match.
Do you really?
So here's my thing. I also had Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa New Orleans in my honorable mentions, but I think what I like more about the Chicago match is, one, it's shorter, and 2, I think they just go hell for leather with all the violence and like the storytelling. Like, it's melodramatic as fuck, don't get me wrong. But something about it is just really entertaining.
Well, it's like, it's parallel to it because that's the second one is the same way. It is also melodramatic as all hell. And, you know, I don't love it for that as much as I might have like 3-4 years ago. But it's just a fun brawl. I enjoy most of what I see. By the end, when the melodramatic stuff gets a bit more played up, I'm like, okay, I'm not super hooked. I do like the final DDT Ciampa hits on Gargano. I think it's a pretty nice little, I guess you could say, a surprise ending. Although it's the fact that the referee is just gone the entire time that Gargano is like assaulting him and like he's just tapping blatantly over and over, and he just shows up the second like Ciampa gets his DDT. It didn't really rub me the right way. But like for the first half, it's a fun brawl. I wasn't going to stick on the list.
No.
I think the only really notable I know this is usually makes everyone's cut, but the men's war game match did not make mine. It was the first one. It's a fun ass match. It was close, but it just didn't make it.
Interesting. So Cherry, is that all your honorable mentions?
Yeah, those are the most of them.
So my good man, I will give you number 20. Cherry, what is your number 20 favorite NXT match of all time?
Coming in sitting pretty at number 20 is Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne at TakeOver Chicago.
Interesting. See, I was thinking about putting this in my honorable mention.
Yeah, it's kind of, as it is, I think, with all lists, especially when you go up and make them bigger and bigger into your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. The higher you go, the more you're just going to be like, maybe in a month, my number 22 is going to be my number 20, right?
Okay, yeah.
It's that sort of thing. But I will say, what they execute here is pretty damn consistent. I think that the escalation of action is really well handled, and this is like in the era of NXT before everything goes way too overboard, or they do way too much early on, and then I'm like lost in the last half. They keep everything pretty reserved as far as like their big signature moves go, and they just sprinkle them in all throughout the match. It keeps it like from feeling like too dry, and Bate hits a spiral tap, and that like just popped me huge. I don't see anybody hit the damn spiral tap, and I need it more in my matches. They kind of play off a dream match like style, which I've kind of in my own head consider that to be when the whole match is built off showcasing both of their movesets, and just only focusing in on highlighting those signature moves everyone knows them for, and just determining how to get from move to move without it feeling like a spot fest. And they kind of play off that, except Bate has the upper hand for most of it, which I found odd, because usually, unless you have a specific wrestler, like as we'll get to later with Zayn and Nakamura, they really wanted to showcase Nakamura for his debut, so he has more shine in it. I found it odd that they wouldn't want to put Pete over as the more domineering heel. But in the end, I think it pulls itself well together because it's Bate's overzealousness and wanting to always do more in the match that actually costs him. So that was a clever little detail that I enjoyed, and it's just a fun match of guys working that sort of like high stakes indie style.
Yeah, because like you mentioned the big spot fest, not the spot fest, but like the spots that people are known for. The crowd really lights up for that airplane spin. That's a really fun spot.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's like a crazy bastard on that.
X-Plex powerbomb from Dunne to Bate.
There's that one. There's the X-Plex to the apron. There's the DDT that comes out of the bitter end, which is pretty sweet. The spiral tap's nice. So yeah, they got those like spot and moments that hit pretty hard and helps put the rest of the match over.
Yeah, I think my opinion with this match is like if we were doing like a top 25 or top 30, I probably would squeak it in there, but you know, it's so many matches that were so good that kind of just beat it out.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
So my number 20 is Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae, NXT Takeover Toronto.
That's one of my. That was actually an honorable mention of mine.
Oh, okay. Interesting how that worked out. All right, so this is easily the best introduction to what both Io and Candice can do as competitors, and while I wouldn't say it's completely Io's match, as Candice is good here showing her trademark toughness and has good hope spots where she can match Io's intensity with some really exciting near falls like a second rope spinning neck breaker, Io is practically perfect here. From her entrance, athleticism, her mannerisms, to the way Shirai's facials, especially her eyes, are just so emotive in projecting how despondent she becomes. The more and more Candice kicks out of her offense, she really helps put over how persistent LeRae is, while also displaying the depths Shirai will go to the more vicious her offense becomes. Shirai is just a ball of energy here, hitting high velocity moves including vicious running knees, a 619, and a gorgeous top rope Spanish fly. There's no wonder why these two would get paired up against each other, as they have extremely good chemistry, but to me personally, this is probably my favorite encounter they have, given just how consistently intense the bout was, where the pace never let up, and Candice proves that she deserves to be among the best in the NXT women's division, fighting from underneath to win the crowd over. And Io Shirai feels like the biggest star in the world with how tremendous she carries herself in every aspect of her abilities and character. An absolute crime that both women haven't been utilized to the best of their abilities on bigger main roster stage, but here it's a tremendous display of what could have been.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fucking fair summary. I mean, it's one of those where it was close. I could easily see it cracking into my 20. Yeah. But that was also my favorite bout of theirs. I felt like I think the difference maker for this match for me is something you mentioned, where the tension and the intensity of it all, it felt the most consistent all the way to the end. There weren't any drop-offs.
Right, because there's matches they'd have at TakeOver, and they had one which is like a TLC.
Yeah.
Oh my. It's like, this is fun, but we're never gonna chase that dragon again.
No. Maybe if we're lucky one day, but I don't really see it happening.
All right, Cherry, what's your number 19?
My number 19 is one that we mentioned earlier. It is Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley from December 18th, 2019. It was one I did not foresee hitting my list because I have issues with Rhea, and just I can never fully get myself emotionally invested. But as we kind of like mentioned before in the other like section, this is the match that helped draw me in, played into both of their strengths, and I enjoyed a lot seeing a different side of Shayna, seeing those insecurities and the fear of her losing her title get wrapped up. She keeps her mostly onto the ground. She does most of her signature spots that you're gonna like expect, and the moment is a really big payoff for Rhea, and it feels pretty earned, even if I'm not the biggest fan of hers. The top rope riptide is smooth as hell, and overall, I think they put together some of Rhea's best work in the match.
First major storyline that NXT built when it came to 2 hours that really paid off.
Yes. I can't really remember it before.
Yeah, like not even like Ciampa and Cole, not even Undisputed Era winning all the gold. Like I will remember, like from 2019, I think I'll remember the Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley feud above everything else.
Yeah, nothing else like rises to that same level of hype either. I don't even see, not even just from my own personal experience, even like the wrestling community as a whole, I don't see much else talked about in that with that same level of like excitement.
It's like the women's division in NXT was always great, but something about 2019, man, something about that division was special.
Exactly. What is your next pick, my good friend?
Number 19. And before I start, I want to say shoutouts to Nova Exploder. Number 19, Oni Lorcan versus Hideo Itami, NXT 6/28, 2017.
Fuck yeah, my dude.
Dude, this match fucks.
It fucks.
It's so good.
What do you want me to say? It fucks.
Right. It's so mad and chaotic, it's hard not to love it. Oni is on crack here, lighting up Itami with huge uppercuts and chops, hitting him so hard, he busts Hideo Itami's nose open, ending the match. But Itami doesn't play that shit, and Itami comes the fuck back out, his nose plugged, and just beckons Lorcan back. Itami rules so much, and returns the favor on Lorcan by exploding with a Yakuza kick to the corner, and just lays in kicks and knees, and Lorcan responding with stiff uppercuts and chops. Itami takes a distraction from the ref to kick out Oni Lorcan's knee, forcing him to later crumble in pain, giving him enough of a chance to get him away with a GTS. It's such a brief and compact blur, but filled with such violent zen that you really believe that both men just wanted to destroy each other. Everything looks like it hurts. It's such a rare type of match in NXT that you really have to appreciate the balls of which it takes to commit to it.
And following that up, it's like, I was coming into that match, I remember back watching NXT at this time, and I felt like disappointed. I was like, this isn't the Kenta I remember. And some of that is like my own like expectations, like being a bit overblown. But it was so relieving going back and just seeing like, no, I don't even know what I was thinking. Like, he's still kicking the shit out of people. He's got a really charming attitude about him. And in that match, because I remember you had one that recommended I go check it out again. I'm like, what is there not for me to love about an Oni Lorcan versus Hideo Itami match?
And it's like 5 minutes long.
I know. It's exactly what I wanted.
It's so brief and compact, but so violent in its entirety.
Perfect for what it needs to be.
So Cherry, what is your number 18?
My number 18 is the Women's War Games match. Now this is a very fun, well-paced, and well-built-up match. We get the initial start off with Candice and Io working against each other. They work well. It's an easy pick to do. I love there's just little moments in here that are just so much fun. Bianca comes in and Io just hits the ropes over and over and over again, only to just drop a drop kick on Candice. And I just love those little digs in to get under the audience's skin. Rhea coming in. It's one where I also really enjoyed Rhea's performance in the match. She gets a big pop. She's throwing in as many weapons as possible. The Tower of Doom spot on the chairs is sweet. The 450 from Belair is picture perfect. That heel turn of Dakota Kai, though, that's something that cemented this match for me. She really did a great job of capturing the brutality of slamming that door into Tegan Nox. I think everyone there plays off that moment so well with Tegan's violent screams. Kai puts in a hell of a lot of force into striking the knee with that door. And it might be bias on my part, but my man William Regal, he comes out here and he puts this moment over tenfold. He gets shoved by Dakota Kai and he throws his face back and he has this rage-filled face. He's gritting his teeth at her and grabbing at her. I'm just oh my god. I just wrote a note in here when I was watching the match the first time again. I just put, Regal just makes everything better no matter what. They stack the odds against them all with the 2-on-4 disadvantage. Candice and Rhea give them all hell with kendo stick shots that all look great. There's a gory bomb, a moonsault to Candice. There's this nasty, I didn't write the move down, but it's Rhea, I think she power bomb Kaylee Ray into the cage and she folds, falling down the cell, and it just looks so nasty. There's moonsault off the top of the cage, the close call with the Kirifuda clutch on Rhea, and they're both handcuffed together, and she kicks Shayna until she can hit the riptide under the chairs, getting her team the win. I mean, for one of those car crash WWE matches, this gave me most anything I could want out of it, with a surprising heel turn and some much needed emotional investment into the match that I wasn't expecting.
I'm not going to say anything because we'll get to it.
We will get to it. So what is your next pick?
Number 18 is War Games. NXT Takeover War Games 2017. So the first and arguably the best it ever got for the men's division. The War Games stipulation was always a guaranteed fun spot fest that you could turn your brain off to, whether it's the author's opinion just throwing and slamming dudes into other dudes, Sanity getting all the weapons, Kyle O'Reilly bashing his own head in with a chair, is trying to hit Wolf with it and just bounces it off the ropes and hits himself. Such a funny spot. Killian Dane single-handedly stealing the show with some of the most nutty offense I've ever seen a big man hit. He hits coast to coast, drop kick sentons, Michinoku driver onto Bobby Fish as he sits all 300 pounds on Cole. He's just on one in this match. There's just too many spots to name here. Throw in stereo towers of doom and Roderick Strong suplexing Cole off the top of the cage into all three teams. It's all of a hoot. Probably the most fun War Games match I've watched, mainly because it doesn't outstay its welcome the way the other War Games matches do, as it's consistently just going and the spots get more and more creative. The War Games formula would inevitably smooth itself out and fall into a pattern, but here it's still fresh and chaotic in ways later War Games matches lack. A fitting send-off to one of NXT's best years.
I couldn't say I could put it any better myself. The stakes were high, there are just way too many spots by the end to count, and it is that car crash WWE match style that just pays off for a return of the match type that has been really prolific. I couldn't think of a better way to reintroduce it in a modern context.
I understand why it's not in your list or still in your honorable mentions, but to me I think the spots that stand out really stand out to me, especially everything Killian Dane does. He's just wild here. So, Cherry, what is your number 17?
My number 17 is this match between Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. Now, these two put on a display of violence that I think is rarely seen in modern WWE. And I don't mean like, oh, there's an obscene amount of blood, there's an obscene amount of weapons and huge moments. This just felt raw in a way I just hadn't seen for quite a while from this company. I mean, Thatcher, for one, this is a match that made me realize I need to check out more of this guy. When he gets, I think it must have been off the kick from Riddle, and he just starts spitting blood all over the ring. It almost scared me with how feeble this guy was like getting up with, and it really blurred that line between like how real is this versus how fake, in quotes, this is. And with Thatcher's face when he has got his crooked smile and the doctor's like checking on him, I'm like, this dude looks like an absolute monster. And they fight on the top, and that's really fun. And like, I love that there's no big spot, there's not a big suplex, there's not a power bomb that sends them both crashing back down to the mat. It just comes off after Thatcher's getting the hell beat out of him, and he just falls to the mats, which I liked a lot. It played into that more like down and gritty, like this MMA style that they were going for. This rewatch put Riddle in a different context for me, because I didn't ever see much of him before this point, because this was after when I started getting like a bit disillusioned with watching NXT, and so I didn't catch a lot of his run, and I didn't know how brutally this guy could throw strikes, and the quickness that he keeps these sequences up, which is something we'll see in a later match I have on my list. But I think by far my favorite spot of this match is when Thatcher locks in the sleeper hold. Despite Riddle's attempts to break it up and he's scrambling to get out of it, Thatcher wins. And I love how like the fight Riddle puts into escaping it. It makes so much more sense how desperate he is to escape it because of how quickly Thatcher lays him out. It's that like surprise direct ending punch to the gut that I wasn't expecting, but fits so perfectly into this match.
It is the closest thing WWE will ever get to a Bloodsport match.
Absolutely true. As I'm sure you'll have it on your list later since you recommended to me. What is your number 17?
My number 17? Do you really want to know what my number 17 is?
Oh, I want to know.
Okay, coming in at number 17, The Undisputed Era versus Birch and Lorcan, NXT Takeover Chicago 2.
My man. What?
So, everything you said about this match, I completely agree with you, and I even echo, which is why I didn't really write so much here, but in my opinion, this isn't even close to being my favorite Undisputed Era tag match. But what I do love, though, is Birch and Lorcan's ability to win the crowd over during the length of the match, to the point where you really believe that they stand a chance. They just go so hard and act so aggressively that it matches O'Reilly's striking prowess and strong, stiff style. Everything builds so wonderfully where, by the end, either team could win, and you wouldn't be disappointed with either one winning.
Well, couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say about this match.
There we go.
It's number 17.
Fine. Whatever.
So going forward, Cherry, what is your number 16?
I'm following this one up with another Matt Riddle match. This one's against Roderick Strong at TakeOver 25. Man, oh man, did I get a lot out of this match on multiple rewatches. This reaches this fever pitch for me, where it really appealed to one of my favorite things in wrestling, which is just dudes beating the shit out of each other, dudes keeping up the intensity and throwing hard-ass strikes. There's nothing that can spellbind me quicker to a match, and this one does it, like, I won't say perfectly, but close enough. It's one where, since everything about the match is a lot more grounded, and it's very strike-heavy, and it's quick, and I can't name a lot of spots off the top of my head. Roderick gives so much to Matt Riddle in this match. He sells his ass off for the dude. And in the end, I think they just wrapped it up in this perfect hard-hitting package.
Yeah, now that you mention that, I don't know why I didn't put that on my honorable mentions. I should have watched that match more. It sounds like something that you love.
I'm just saying, man.
It is a great match, though. It is a great match.
Andos, can you give me another one, please?
Coming in at number 16, it's the Women's War Games match. NXT Takeover War Games 11/23, 2019. My favorite NXT War Games match. Compared to how most War Games match operate, I just love how different and unique the story unfolds here. This match with Dakota Kai's betrayal still feeling heartbreaking and vicious to this day, as Rhea and Candice desperately fight from underneath to overcome the 4-2 number advantage. LeRae and Ripley get such good hope spots that it's so cathartic as the heel team takes every advantage to crush their hopes. The spots here are somehow even more wild than the previous War Games matches, which, with both Ripley and Baszler doing dual submissions into each other's team members, Ripley hitting a Tower of Doom powerbomb only for Bianca to immediately follow up with a 450, Io Shirai doing a moonsault from the top of the cage, and Rhea Ripley handcuffing Baszler and hitting her with her finish atop a pile of chairs. Everyone has a moment to shine here, especially Shirai and Belair, as they're able to display their incredible athleticism, while Candice is able to absorb so much punishment, but displays her toughness to keep going to endear the crowd to her, an all-time celebration of just how great the women's division was in 2019.
It really does put it all in perspective like that, doesn't it?
It's funny how you mentioned the William Regal spot, because, like, nobody touched William Regal. Like, despite how much he had beef with Kevin Owens or Adam Cole, nobody touched William Regal. So when Dakota Kai shoved him, I was like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah, that reaction. Like, I love that. For such, like, it's such a minimal thing. She just shoves her hand into his face, but the crowd has such a strong reaction. It was so awesome.
And I think, like, too, it's probably the shortest one at, like, little over 30 minutes. But, like, they make the most of that story because, like, they really take creative liberties with it, and they, like, try new things and, like, tell interesting stories with, like, the advantages and how LeRae and Ripley break through and overcome the odds. It's great. It's a really fun story.
Absolutely.
Cherry, give me another one. What is your number 15?
My number 15 is Ilja Dragunov versus Walter at TakeOver 35.
So was mine.
Oh, well, holy shit. Well, this should be... Well, this should make this quick and easy. The first half features some really fun and aggressive sequences between the two. Dragunov capitalizes on building momentum by not allowing Walter to ground and pound him. And once Walter remains on top, we get to see Walter break down Dragunov. And he's set up previously and mentioned as such on commentary that he's basically a sponge for pain and punishment. Ilja, that is. But Walter keeps a continuous dose of pummeling so as to keep Dragunov from building up momentum and achieving that fighting spirit that he's like trying to climb to. And once he does have his comeback sequence, there's like a really unique and fun sequence where Walter's first move to combat this is to lock him into a sleeper hold, which utilizes his size and strength, and you can see him, like, it's visibly being very effective. But he chooses to switch it up afterwards, and he gives him a suplex out of it, which I thought Dragunov sold this really in like a really interesting way, because he's clearly taken aback, but he still has maintained enough of momentum to do that rushing headbutt of his. And I just sat there and I was like, oh, Walter, if you would have just kept the sleeper hold, you might have been able to even win the match.
Right.
And that was a super clever moment. After this point, the match goes into a bit more spotty pin sequences, which I enjoyed them well enough, but they definitely weren't playing off the initial structure that I liked a lot from the match. But they really sold me in the end with how Walter was taken out. It wasn't through some finisher or big spot. It was just overwhelming, pummeling violence being thrown finally back at Walter that gave it like a surprise ending.
Yeah, like I said, this is my number 15 as well. And up front, I'll be honest, this isn't my favorite meeting between the two. Like, it's not the Zen violence of their NXT UK match, and it's a far cry from their WXW 16 Carat match, which is still probably my favorite of their meetings. But I think what I enjoy most about this is how much it kind of, as NXT as we knew it, as the black and gold brand was dying, this was the perfect bow to wrap up the entire promotion with, because it adheres so much to the ethos of what NXT is, which is like big storylines, big cathartic payoffs. And one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to Walter is that he's one of the most giving big men in all of wrestling. If you watch the way that he pins Dragunov, like he's really like pushing him down and like using all of his body weight. And he just keeps kicking out and keeps kicking out. And like it's a moment where Walter chops the fuck out of the back of his neck, and there's that scene of like Walter like going, "Oh shit," as Dragunov powers up and hulks up. And it's like this awesome like visual moment where it's, oh, Walter's losing this match, isn't he?
Yeah, it subtly implants that idea in there.
Yeah, he sells being on the back foot the entire match so excellently, as like he keeps putting on damage and damage and damage onto him, and he just keeps coming. And what I loved so much about the ending was that it was kind of a callback to their NXT UK match where Walter takes him out with the sleeper, but then he takes him out, he being Dragunov, takes out Walter with the sleeper. Like, he's just chopping him down, but he's not giving up, and he keeps chopping him down. And the entire time I'm watching it, I'm like, come on, Ilya, come on! It's such a great... Like I said, it's the ethos of NXT perfectly put in as the company, or the promotion, I should say, changes and becomes something different.
Yeah, and that's sort of like, in that symbolic way, it really does... It gives a new perspective to it that's interesting. But I totally agree with like that, the way that ending was handled. It was like doing everything and anything he can in like the most Dragunov way possible to like finish the match. I was so hooked on.
Yeah, and I love the reaction too from Dragunov, where he like doesn't even realize that he's won. Like, he just kind of like looks at the ref and is like, did I win? And you just see him crying. Ah, it's so beautiful. So that was both for number 15s. Cherry, what is your number 14 pick?
My number 14 is Johnny Gargano versus Aleister Black from Takeover War Games 2.
Fuck yes.
These guys put on one hell of a show. It's one where we get to see Johnny's newfound hubris get him into trouble as he disrespects Black and sends Black into a fury, throws in as many strikes as possible. The interesting thing for me in this match was they managed to show Gargano's style, which is usually geared towards a babyface, and they flip it, where he usually allows Black to spend all of his energy getting in as much offense as him as possible, but Gargano thrives when he's on the back foot and he's able to work around somebody else with his counter wrestling, and then he throws in his spots. And I love that the way they throw that in with this match. And just from like little mannerisms or recognizing like certain spots Aleister's going to do, it suits his character more this time around. And there's so many awesome spots, whether it's Gargano's suicide dive that's caught by Aleister's knee to the head, or when Aleister tries to do something that you would expect from Gargano and he eggs on Johnny to hit him with that super kick. In turn, it makes Johnny pull down his knee pad and he goes rushing at him. Aleister tries to deflect it and capitalize off it, but he's not quick enough and Johnny still gets a spot over on him. And what I love so much about that was at first it was just, oh, that was like a pretty cool spot, but the way they play that back in the end, where they reverse the scenario and Gargano tempts Aleister, and he puts so much more melodrama into it and he eggs Aleister in and smarts him, because Aleister is such a direct tour de force and Gargano is a lot smarmier, and he reverses around him into the Gargano escape. And I was like, that was a great way to pull something back from earlier in the match and give it like a new context that fits both wrestlers really well. I mean, the match kicks ass. It keeps up its momentum. There's never a moment where I'm bored. There's that epic line, I absolve you of all of your sins. One more black mass after the first and it ends it. Just, this honestly should be higher, but for now, 14 feels pretty right to me.
Yeah, is that like not one of the most cold lines in all of wrestling? I absolve you of all your sins, as he knocks him out.
Hits even harder with the fact that he already did it once and he's just keeping him there. And you're like, he's just completely in the hands of Aleister. It was so fucking awesome. With that in mind, what is your number 14?
The Revival versus D.I.Y, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2. So I think I mentioned before that I actually prefer the pairing of Ciampa and Gargano over American Alpha in these matches. Mainly because the story of Ciampa and Gargano fighting each other in the Cruiserweight Classic and then learning to become a team is really fascinating, and seeing them work it all out is really like interesting to see. They're just naturally likable as a team, the way they kind of like fight and then come together. So seeing them utilize modern offense against the Revival's throwback style really forces the Revival to bring out the best in their maneuvers and tricks to slow down the much more exciting and explosive DIY. The Revival's dynamics are great here. Dash Wilder plays an excellent heel role here as the ring general of the team, knowing right when to tag, positioning on the mat and ropes, as well as being crafty enough to know when to get the ref's attention, to cost DIY, and allow Scott to do damage. Scott Dawson as well is excellent as the enforcer of the team. Everything he does looks legit and gritty, something as simple as grinding a headlock to the power he throws in his forearm strikes. He really complements Dash's intellect well with rugged power. Excellent hot tag denial here from Scott too, as he pretends to fall into the ring to distract the ref. And while Ciampa gets the tag from Gargano, the ref doesn't see it and allows the Revival to hit a tag team near fall on Ciampa. Gargano getting tagged really lights the crowd up as he hits a lot of cool stuff that doesn't go over the top, as the crowd gets so invested based purely on how well each man was able to build to that tag. Strike exchange from Dash and Ciampa is really great here too. Both men are the strikers of their respective team, and each man hits nasty forearms and knees. The closing moments are such good shit. The near falls from DIY with that Shatter Machine reversal into super kick from Gargano to Dash and Ciampa rolling up Scott, to DIY hitting their finisher, only for Scott to get his foot on the rope, are great moments of portraying how synergistic both Ciampa and Gargano are. But also the rookie moves like bad ring presence show how much work the team still needs, only emphasized by how heartbreaking the leg break on Gargano and instant tap out from Gargano feels, showing the even lightest bit of an experience will cost you everything against the Revival. The seeds this match plants going forward with how uncertain the direction of DIY is follows them throughout their entire run, and the Revival put in some of the best of their heel tactics and synergy of their entire NXT and maybe even WWE run here, and cements them as easily one of the best tag teams in the promotion's history.
I think something you really hit the nail on the head with is both teams are definitely very synergized, but you can definitely tell the Revival is way more cohesive as a tag team, and there are those spots where
reps.
Yeah, and there are those spots where it feels more like these guys are great, they're a successful tag team, but DIY still at this point feel like two great individual wrestlers trying to come together than one tag team that can't be separated.
Yeah, just that leg. I'll never forget that leg break from Gargano because he's just writhing in pain and Ciampa's nowhere to be seen. It gets me every time. It's like, Johnny, no. Like I said, like that story beat follows them throughout their entire matches too.
Absolutely.
It's a really, really great scene. So Cherry, tell me, what is your number 13?
My number 13, and it's very funny given what you just talked about, is American Alpha versus the Revival at Takeover the End.
Tell me more.
I mean, come on, dude. These two work so damn well together. The match dynamic between these guys is so clearly defined. AA are the straightforward, clean baby faces. Gable is an endearing but formidable technical wrestler, with this match being a great showcase for him as a counter wrestler. While Jason Jordan is an absolute force of nature. He comes in like a blaze of glory whenever he gets those tags in. He provides a nice change of pace as he has to wrestle around the Revival. And it makes the babyface comeback spot feel especially climactic and satisfying. The Revival, on the other hand, are not as distinct at this point, but it's not a diss on their part. They work the old school, well-oiled machine, and there are a couple of brutes whose chemistry and strategy hardly ever seem in doubt. The amount of creative sequences they come up with is insane. I remember something that always resonated with me about the Revival when I first saw them is how many spots they come up with to keep the two partners from tagging into each other, no matter what. They have so many of them, and it makes you so much more involved in when the baby faces finally do get their comeback. Everything from tag team maneuvers to various ways of, as I mentioned, cutting American Alpha off from tagging out. Both teams make textbook tag team wrestling look way too good and way too easy.
The best NWA 1985 tag team title match of all time.
Absolutely. I don't even need to go back and watch it.
No, I 100% agree with you. I do really, really enjoy this match. But like, I don't know, maybe this is leaning more towards my tastes in wrestling. It's great chemistry, great moves, great moments. I think what knocked it down for me was the story. I was kind of wanting a more satisfying story. I guess.
No, yeah, that makes total sense. And usually I'm not even like, I think for me, what it depends on is what's either gonna hook me might be if we don't take into account like stylistic preferences for what kind of match it is. It's either gonna be an incredibly well told story, or if the chemistry is so succinct and everything lands hard enough that I am emotionally invested enough just off of that. And so that's kind of what it felt like when watching this, is that they took this very standard babyface, like exactly what the role is for every team member, but they're also well adept at that sort of style that they help elevate each other up.
And I agree with you with the whole synergy and really, really good moves, because like they'd really work on that when they like would face the Young Bucks, for example, on Dynamite, where it's like not too much of a story, but like they really, really work well with each other.
Now, what is your number 13?
Number 13, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn, NXT Takeover Dallas. The ace of NXT takes a bow, but not without going out quietly. Shinsuke Nakamura's debut felt like the biggest deal ever. It's one of those iconic never in a million years moments where you don't believe what you're seeing, but there's a point in this match where both men just say, fuck it, let's have a Japanese style match, and the stiffness never lets up. Nakamura obviously is the king of strong style, and his strikes and bombs hit with all the ferocity and spite you'd expect, but equally as impressive is Zayn's ability to match it. He's just so compelling, without ever lapsing into overindulgence or needless near falls to build drama. Even though the result is never in question, you believe that both men are out there with such intensity that it all comes down to who wants it more. Commentary really make Nakamura special here, listing his history and background to make him feel like the most important import WWE has ever signed. And in the end, it's an all-time emotional moment for the brand. The way Sami and Shinsuke embrace each other as the crowd cheers, "Thank you, Sami." The brand is never the same without him.
I can't say I could put that any more succinctly than you just did, but I might have to try later on.
Interesting. So then, Cherry, what is your number 12?
My number 12 it's the match. It's one of the big ones. Everyone loves it. Everyone talks about it. Number 12 is Sasha Banks versus Bayley from Takeover Brooklyn.
Whoa!
What?
Whoa.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but it's just true. It is. It's just true. It's number 12. It's not even top 10. Banks.
I did not. I thought I was wilding with my pick for where that match was, but damn, number 12?
Get fucked, Andos. So, no. Banks and Bayley is great. It's fucking fantastic. These two work so incredibly well. It is that underdog story. I can't say I've seen it pulled off since this match happening, maybe as compellingly as this one. Up to debate. I mean, what is there to say at this point? It's got the high stakes moves. It's got the high stakes story. These are two of the best women of their era, and they come together to make, I think, just at the end of the day, a very satisfying match. It's not quite one of the best for me personally. It has the grandioseness that you want out of a match like this to propel that underdog story to new heights. And I mean, I know 12 is like shocking, but like I don't really have many faults against it. I've really enjoyed every time I had to go back and rewatched it. I rewatched it three times, third time just because I wanted to watch it again.
Okay, interesting. I'll save my commentary on it when I get to it.
Why don't we get there a little bit quicker and you give me your number 12?
Number 12 is also a match that takes place in Brooklyn, but 3 years later, Shayna Baszler versus Kairi Sane, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 4. I probably love this match more than most people. I think the pure strength of this match is the dynamics and performances that each competitor delivers, and they just do it so extremely well, with Baszler being a monster here, bullying the hell out of Sane by cranking her injured leg, mocking her gimmick, and all around just brutalizing her with her MMA experience. Same on the other hand is the amazing babyface here by Kairi Sane. Her facials and screams are just so horrible, the way she registers pain from Baszler, which makes Baszler's control segments all the more vicious, especially the way she sells her injured leg, wincing in pain each time she tries to string together offense against the dominant Baszler. When Sane is able to take control, she is so exciting to watch, as each strike and big move has so much speed and spite behind it, as anything less than meeting Baszler's fire will cost her. The finish here, like you said, is awesome here as well. They just trade submissions, especially a moment where Kairi is in the Kirifuda clutch and Sane is just about to pass out before firing up to grab the rope, as well as Sane reversing a heel hook into an anchor submission. As Kairi's about to hit one more insane elbow, Baszler catches her in the clutch for Sane to reverse it into a 3 count, pinning her shoulders to the mat. Fitting end, as it shows how far both women have come, and that the only way that Sane could beat the dominant Baszler was to use her intelligence and skill, putting over how dangerous Baszler is, but also how crafty and reliant Sane is. A cathartic moment that is only the first chapter in the NXT 2018 Feud of the Year.
Damn, now that is a way to put over a great but underrated match.
See, originally I had this match at like number 6 because I just really loved it that much. But like on rewatches, there's a bit of it that doesn't shine as much as when I first watched it, but still it's one of the best matches in Brooklyn. So Cherry, what is your number 11?
Listen, man. My number 11 is the Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain 7/11/2018. Just close to cracking the top 10. It's so close. I mean, my God, what is there to say? This story is one of the best told on NXT television, if not the best told. From the back and forth that they start off with, where both teams sort of trade offense and it's kind of up in the air who's going to get on top. Roderick drops 7 right onto the steps on that injured knee, and from then it's just a dissection. I love how much Bate puts into selling this knee the whole time. He is scratching, clawing, crawling to try and get Bate, while Kyle and Roderick just run a dissection all over it. And there's such pain in the wails and the tugging at the shirt of the referee by the end of the match. The agony on display from the submission feels fully justified, since the leg came in injured and was a focal point of the attack from Undisputed Era. The ending is very drawn out, but that does 2 things. One, it really relies on you being invested, and it squeezes every amount of tension and emotion out of you by going back and forth between if Tyler is going to throw in the towel or if Seven was going to tap out. And the other thing I think this does is that it kind of stretches your belief in how badly Trent was hurt if he can hang on for as long as he does. But for my part, this had me hooked in hard enough that it wasn't distracting at all. Bate throws it in, they lay in the ring, full of shame but also pity, and it's a really sour ending to an episode of NXT. But working backwards from that, I love how once Bate comes in and he has his comeback and he's trying to fend off like both O'Reilly and Roderick at the same time, and Bate's trying to desperately get in there and help his protecting partner. I love the way that they tag him back in. Bate never goes over and willingly chooses to have it happen. He gets tossed into Bate, and Bate does his most, but in the end it's just not enough.
The most heartbreaking ending to an NXT match of all time. And that's all I'm going to say about it right now.
Now we're getting close to the Big Ten. But before that, you need to give me your number 11.
Number 11, just couldn't do it. And it's a match that I love a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be surprised isn't higher, but number 11, the NXT North American ladder match, NXT Takeover New Orleans. So, let me get this out of the way. It's dumb. It's really dumb. In fact, I would make the argument that the legacy of this match led to future ladder matches, setting a precedent of being more dangerous, more spot-heavy, more wince-inducing. But in a vacuum, this is one of my favorite spot fests of all time. Literally every moment, there's something wild and violent happening. Some of the spots here live in my memory more than entire years of my life. Whether that's Ricochet casually moonsaulting off a ladder into a crowd of his competitors, Dane and Sullivan trying to outdo each other with ridiculous feats of big boy strength, Velveteen Dream nearly ending his career by hitting a Death Valley driver onto Ricochet, While on said ladder, it's just a car crash demolition derby, and instead of just listing off spots, I think what makes everything work here, aside from just being insane, is just the pure desire and drive to be the first North American champion. There will only ever be one in history, and given how his character is built upon being an opportunist, I actually really like Adam Cole being the first North American champion. But not much else to say here. If you've seen it, see it again, and if you haven't, you're in for a treat.
Yep, I've already thrown in my hot take when it comes to this match, and I don't really even necessarily disagree with most of what you said. It is dumb, you could say, but it's well executed, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
It's so much fun, yeah. I think like the fun factor alone is like really pushing it.
Absolutely.
Like I'm thinking of the spot where Sullivan has two guys ready for a slam, and Dane has two guys ready for a slam. They put them both through the ladder.
Yeah.
Where Noah's like, there are no words. It's so wild and insane.
I mean, when Sullivan and Dane just toss Ricochet back and forth at each other, that's one of the funniest things I saw during this retrospective.
And the crowd's like, throw him back.
Exactly.
Here we are. We are at our top 10, the best of the best. No wimps here. All bangers. Tell me, what is your number 10?
Number 10 is a match that's better than Sasha and Bayley. We've got Shayna Baszler versus Bianca Belair versus Kairi Sane versus Io Shirai at TakeOver New York. This is a match I don't see a lot of talk about. And yeah, it's one of those matches that doesn't have the most out there story. I understand how it can fall under people's radar. I cannot lie, I was so enthralled watching this match. This match is like an extended bout of sequences, whether it's signature moves, tag team combos, multi-man spots, or character-specific spots. It keeps this Fatal 4-Way feel so fresh. It's so filled with variety. All of these women were coming into their own around this time. They're all great wrestlers and character workers, and there's so many fun little moments here. One in particular is when Bianca Belair blows a kiss at Kairi Sane. Kairi grabs it out of thin air, and she throws it at Io, who knocks it like she's hitting a home run into the crowd. Moments that feel very reminiscent of like Joshi spots are always fun to see. There's Belair hitting a military press slam right on outside to everybody. The Sky Pirates are going absolutely insane together. I love the fact that when we inevitably get Kairi and Io turning against each other to fight each other in the match, it doesn't come until they actually have to break each other's pins up. And it's not too melodramatic. They exchange a look of shock and sadness, and then they get fully right into it, with Io hitting some of her best drop kicks and moonsaults that she's ever hit in the company. It plays up exactly what it needs to, but it plays up the melodrama in the way you would expect it to, but it doesn't go too far into it. This match is just so much fun. Belair hitting a KOD on both Kairi and Io at the same time and having it actually look good was insane. I love the ending when Baszler finally locks Bianca into the Karafuda clutch. I don't think I've seen someone struggle in the same way as Bianca did to escape that. She's clawing and putting her hands all into Shayna's hair. Shayna's screaming at the top of her lungs. Kairi and Io already took each other out, and just like that, she gets another win. It is way too good of a match to be talked about this little.
I'm so glad that, along with the Roderick Strong Matt Riddle match, I'm so glad you mentioned, because I feel like nobody talks about those matches and they're so much fun.
Yeah, those were sort of the hidden gems you were asking me about before, where you'd mentioned to me to check out the Strong and Riddle match, which was a great recommendation, but I was scrolling through Cage Match and I just saw this match sitting on there and I'm like, it's got like a 7 point whatever, but I like all these wrestlers, so it could just be a fun little breather match for me. And well, it's turned out to be one of my favorites of the entire list.
And I'm not sure if you mentioned her again, but Bianca Belair in NXT, she was still that good. Like, people talk about, oh man, she's so good in main roster. No, she was that good in NXT.
She is so dedicated to herself. And it's something I sort of mentioned before, but it wasn't just in this match having like a variety of spots, different kind of sequences that they all put together. it's that they lock in so many great character moments, and you actually get to see all these women are really great at building off character alone. There's so much personality in this match that it fulfills both, like, you wanting those big high spots, you want like character specific spots, then you just want like cute fun little moments, and it doesn't go too long either. I think the match is only like maybe at most 23 minutes. Now, after that whole rant, what is your number 10? The Big 10.
Big 10. Okay, so you mentioned this match before, and I gotta say it. I understand that it's important. I understand that it changed wrestling forever. I understand that people love this match. But at number 10 it sits. And that's why I'm talking about Sasha Banks versus Bayley. NXT.
Woo!
Bayley's babyface fire here is just as good as Sasha's bully heel tactics, demeaning and mocking her by getting her own hair in a ponytail and doing the Bayley pose. This is really a career performance for Banks, as she really shows so much emotions, the way that she talks smack to Bayley while putting her in rest holds, and gradually losing her composure the more Bayley kicks out of her offense. Although, if I have one criticism, is that Sasha Banks kind of has those quote-unquote Adam Cole moments, where like she'll yell her motivations, where it's like, "You're a loser, Bayley. You think you're better than me?" But she doesn't do it too much to where it bothers me.
Like it works enough for me with like what the match is. It's a simple underdog story. So I wish they would have found more inventive ways of expressing that, but it doesn't distract me either when I'm trying to watch the match.
No, she still is really able to hold it together with her performance, as Banks is able to cut off a hope spot from Bayley by working her hand. Now, this is another section of the match that I'm not the biggest fan of, as I wish it had more of a focus, and I wish Bayley sold it more throughout the match, but Banks works on it really well enough to gain a good amount of sympathy towards Bayley, especially, and this is my favorite part of the entire match, wherein Banks has Bayley in the bank statement and just stomps and stomps on the injured hand as she's going for the ropes. And the gradual degradation of Banks' emotion as Bayley continues to kick out and kick out really shows how desperate and dangerous her chances are of retaining her title are, as Bayley just keeps coming and coming, showing some fiery offense, finishing the match with an awesome looking Poison Rana and Bayley to belly. So I do really like this match, and I really appreciate how it gradually builds and knows how to pace itself and end. And in terms of importance and satisfaction, as NXT really knows how to do this, you know, build, give catharsis, have big moments. And in terms of like what it did for wrestling, it's easily up there with Okada, Omega, and Punk Cena in terms of what the division was capable of doing going forward.
Absolutely.
And also, one more thing I want to add is that Banks has better matches than this. I think Bayley has better matches than this.
Ooh.
Like, this is a great match, but I think Banks versus Belair at WrestleMania is better. I think the Hell in a Cell match might be better too.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch the Hell in a Cell match. I might enjoy the Belair one more too.
I love the Belair match. Oh my god, that match is so good.
Exceeded my expectations.
So, Cherry, number 9, the fine 9. What you got?
My number 9 is one you've already mentioned before, but it's D.I.Y. versus The Revival. Yeah, it's that match. We all knew it was going to be in here somewhere. I mean, I think you put it all pretty succinctly before. However, I will also say in regards to the match that The Revival just keep getting better and better as a team. Like all of their the best Revival matches are seamless watches, and this one is really no exception. From every sequence they want to pull together, it's seamless. And that dynamic that we mentioned before, where Gargano and Ciampa still feel like they're Gargano and Ciampa and not D.I.Y, it brought a very interesting angle to the match. And when I watched this the first time, it wasn't until the very end where I was like, oh yeah, Revival is still gonna take this. They're just the better tag team. But they slowly just win you over with the amount of effort, that earnest effort they are just putting in all the way to the end. And yeah, that double submission hand holding is one of the best spots in NXT. That's all I really have to say on this match, because I think for the most part it speaks pretty well for itself, and you put it so beautifully earlier, I gotta say.
Oh, thank you.
But Andos, what is your number 9? I got to know, so I can give you my number 8.
All right, then I can give you your number 7.
Thanks.
Because 7, 8, 9. Okay, bad jokes aside, bad jokes aside. So this one's probably going to surprise people, given where I put Sasha Banks versus Bayley. I mentioned that Bayley had better matches in NXT, and this is one of them. And I'm talking about Bayley versus Asuka, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2.
Oh, jeez, you see now that makes your take from before a whole lot spicier.
I mean, it's everything that made their first match together good, but better, more violent, more urgent, more desperate, and what really made to here where it's kind of rise above all of that is kind of like took from Brooklyn. The story of Bayley delaying a main roster call-up to strike magic twice in Brooklyn feels so palpable as she's wearing a piece of her match against Sasha in the form of her headband. Charlotte and Sasha are in the audience, but it's not just the accoutrement that's fueling Bayley. It's the babyface fire she exudes in hitting Asuka harder, countering fast, and overall carrying herself as the hero she knows she is. Brooklyn means everything to Bayley, but this is Asuka, and no matter what Bayley does, Asuka is inevitable. There is a crushing reality to this match that the deeper it goes, the more apparent the end feels. For however hard Bayley hits, Asuka hits harder. As confident as Bayley is, Asuka owns the ring with her presence, smiling with glee as she destroys Brooklyn's adopted daughter. It's never enough. Like Dallas, Asuka just keeps coming with insane knees, kicks, and targeted submissions to Bayley's leg. When Asuka kicks out of the Bayley to belly, everything feels inevitable, almost as if Bayley knows it's over, having only energy enough to fire up after a kick, slapping Asuka in the face, and having an absolute demon be awoken in Asuka to get one last insecurity for the 3 count. A heartbreaking story of doing everything right, but just not being enough in the face of an unstoppable force. This defense cements Asuka as the dominant Empress of NXT. The night where NXT finally loses the second half of its heart and soul, the ace takes a bow.
Seeing this match go this high is pretty damn cool, I gotta admit.
I was debating whether I wanted the Dallas match or the Brooklyn 2 match, but I think the whole theme of it's Brooklyn, it's Bayley's hometown, she's the adopted daughter, she won her first title here only to get absolutely crushed is just such a heartbreaking. It's the absolute opposite of what happened in Brooklyn 1.
Yeah, it definitely puts that whole story over tenfold. And for me, it's a match where I really loved watching that story unfold. The match itself just kept it, for me, it just kept it back. But it was close. If I had to say, if we were doing a top 25, this would at least be on there somewhere.
Right. Also, one spot I want to mention is when Bayley's on the second rope and Asuka catches her with that knee. Oh, that was so good.
Love that shit.
Asuka rules so much. All right, I want it. I want it so badly. Give me your number 8, Cherry.
Nakamura versus Zayn, Dallas. Simple and straightforward as that. What I mentioned earlier, what I noticed out of these sort of build it as dream matches, where you got the head of NXT, he's just barely coming back, and now he's got to face the big dog from Japan coming in to make his debut. And like you said earlier, it's really a match of who wants it more. Commentary puts over Shinsuke in a really excellent way. Shinsuke's offense is just done so much justice by Sammy. The dude looks like he gets hit by a truck off some of his strikes. The match forms sequences between seeing each of their signature moves really well. It's almost to the point where we can basically believe that either one of them could end up taking the match. And the thing that cements that for me is that Zayn doesn't get to hit his running DDT through the corner because it's caught off by a kick from Nakamura, and he never gets to actually hit his Haluva kick. But Shinsuke gets to hit his Kinshasa. It picks him out of the count. The match is structured so well. The guys throw everything at each other. This was before Shinsuke completely died and his knees became useless, and now he just wants to surf. We still got a little taste of the good old Shinsuke, and it's just such a fun match to watch.
I think what I loved about your write-up was how much you nailed down how Sami Zayn matches are so well thought out, because if you think about how Johnny Gargano matches are, it's I'm going to hit big moves, kick out of things, I'm going to hit all my finishers, but with Sami Zayn, it's if only he could hit that Haluva kick, if only he could hit that, it would be over.
He has such a great way of progressing his matches.
He does.
It's a quality that made him one of the most watchable wrestlers out of this whole thing. Like, I forgot. I knew I loved Sami Zayn, but I forgot how much I loved Sami Zayn until we did this retrospective.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from this retrospective was that Sami Zayn is still one of the all-time greats. Like I said in a Twitter post, that Sami Zayn is the best babyface from 2013 to 2016, and I still stand by that.
It's hard to deny, in all honesty, looking back on it. Moving swiftly ahead, you gotta give me your number 8.
So, before I give my number 8, I want to give a shout-out to fellow wrestling YouTuber 4 Pillars of Hell. Shout-outs to you, dude. Because number 8 is Sami Zayn versus Cesaro, WWE NXT Takeover Arrival.
Fuck yes.
So, this match was originally much higher. So this is the second match I watched on my rewatch. And it's such a, no pun intended, unbelievably high bar that I was like, no way anything beats this. But the more I kind of watched it again and I watched other matches, kind of took it down to a number 8. But there's just insane levels of athleticism here. The way Zayn reverses the swing to flip onto his feet, and Cesaro's insane strength of catching a crossbody into a backbreaker. Cesaro was just a great bully here. Mental spot where Cesaro catches Zayn going for the middle rope DDT into an uppercut. Most of the match, Cesaro works the knee and leg of Zayn, just grinding and mashing at it, standing on it with all his weight with dragon screws and stomps. But Zayn is so incredibly sympathetic. The way he sells the leg is masterful. Every time he goes for a big offensive move, he immediately sells the impact of falling on his injured leg. Later in the match, we get more of Cesaro's wild strength by reversing one of Sami Zayn's high-risk maneuvers onto a backbreaker onto the ramp. Little thing, I love how desperate every bit of Zayn's offense feels here. Like, he's not just hitting high-octane moves, but taking advantage of Cesaro slowing down, or Cesaro going to the well once too often with working the knee. Cesaro equally is able to find great counters, where he's able to reverse stuff like Zayn's Koji clutch into a stretch muffler. Even the swing makes sense here, not just as a crowd-pleasing move, but it's something that works so well as the more momentum he puts into his rotations, the more it damages the knee. Top rope Frankensteiner into Haluva kick had me on the edge of my seat. Really excellent strike exchange as well, as Sami Zayn fires up after each uppercut, absolutely folding him, as Cesaro goes, stay down, but he fires up into a well-earned finishing stretch where everything mounts to more and more desperate offense. I love Cesaro pop-up uppercutting Zayn and kicking out at 1. His reaction is great, because it's not just the traditional eye bug, holy shit reaction. Here it's more of a subdued, did he really just do that reaction? It's the exact moment where Cesaro finally earns the respect of Zayn. It's a blistering back and forth that never once goes over the top. The drama is earned and mounts. The post-match where Cesaro embraces Zayn in a hug is just, it's so beautiful. Zayn looks so much better in defeat here and builds his underdog heart and soul case so much.
I love this match. I'm not gonna get too into it, but goddamn, are these two have fucking chemistry? If there's one thing that's obvious,
that builds.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna add that. Just their chemistry is on another level together.
Yeah, it was the first major feud in NXT where this is what we are, we're planting the flag, this is the kind of wrestling you're going to expect, and they just... Shoutouts to the 2 out of 3 Falls match as well. I didn't mention that in my honorable mentions, but that match is awesome too.
Yeah, neither did I. It's a great match. It's like a great prelude to what comes later. I can't imagine if Cesaro stayed at NXT for longer. No. The level of matches that he was already having for the little time he was there.
I'm kind of surprised he never went for the NXT title.
I would have died to see him and Neville face each other, but I guess maybe AEW can provide that going forward.
So, I gotta know, and I gotta know real bad, what is your number 7?
Well, I know you mentioned both Bayley and Sasha having better matches since their Brooklyn match, and I gotta agree, which is why my number 7 is Sasha Banks versus Bayley at Takeover Respect.
Whoa!
This was a surprising one. I didn't expect for me to prefer this match, let alone like it as much as I did, but I was pretty impressed. They trade initial roll-ups, which makes sense in a practical sense, since, I mean, it is an Iron Man match, but it's nothing that seems that special. It's a feeling out process, they counter each other's moves, it's about what you would expect. Until Sasha tries to get some of her signature spots in, and Bayley goes all out. She beats her in and out of the ring, throwing her into the steps, overwhelming her with flurries of strikes and suplexes, and it forces Sasha to climb in front of the referee, claw Bayley's eyes, and roll her up for her first fall. Bayley tries to respond with an added amount of aggression, but Sasha pulls her off with her hair, and they trade this sort of sequence back and forth, and it just starts cementing, okay, Sasha's going to have to turn up her heel attitude all the way up to 11, because in contrast, we are now seeing a more developed Bayley. She's fighting as like a confident champion than just the scrappy underdog. Sasha's aggressiveness puts a lot of damage on Bayley early on, so Bayley can still build up plenty of sympathy as she starts working in her comeback after tying up the score with a roll-up. I think all of this is so clearly defined and enjoyable to watch due to the commitment on both performers. It makes 30 minutes run by as if it was only 15 for me. We get the great spot where Sasha, she makes Izzy cry. Like when I saw it this time, I was like, oh man, that's, I didn't know how to feel about it for a minute, but I can't deny it works really well with the story they're trying to tell with the match. I think that it all ramps up really well with them fighting on the outside against the steel steps, the avalanche Bayley to belly. The inverted avalanche Frankenstein reversal was super cool to see and a nice little callback to their first match. And the belly to belly from Sasha immediately going into the bank statement after the near fall was super sweet because the ref didn't notice it at first. And with the timer running down and the score is tied, she escapes out of that, slams Sasha's hand into the mat, and Bayley locks in the rings of Saturn with like 3 seconds on the clock, and she starts wailing her away and she's twisting her wrist back, and it was such an effective spot. I got completely wrapped into the moment. I think their Brooklyn match is the grandiose, underdog, simple spectacle you want it to be, but I think the sequel offers a bit more as far as developing the two as wrestlers. It pays homage to spots that came before, but I think it adds a whole new context and it really ramps up the characters that they are to this day.
That is such a good write-up for a match that was completely off of my radar. Because I was thinking of watching it, but everyone was like, oh no, Brooklyn's the better match. Brooklyn's the GOAT and all this, and I kind of just didn't go into it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I didn't even really want to watch it because I'd seen it a couple times and it just didn't stand out in my mind. But when I had to sit down and take notes and pay a closer eye to it, I mean, yeah, I really fell in love with the match in a way I was just not expecting to.
All right, I'll definitely check that match out then. I'm glad you were able to get it on your list. That's awesome.
It is awesome, but what would be more awesome is if you could give me your next selection.
Matt Riddle versus Timothy Thatcher, NXT 5/27/2020. So, NXT's pandemic era marks easily the lowest point in the brand's history, as the company would indulge in the worst aspects of its booking with self-indulgent over-the-top kick-out fests. There are bright spots in 2020, like Io Shirai basically carrying the entire brand, with exciting bouts against the likes of Sasha Banks, Candice LeRae, and Rhea Ripley. Finn Balor's return run was way better with a grittier attitude and much deeper talent pool to work with, but at its worst, it tried a lot of gimmicks and bad ideas with cinematic matches, bizarre booking ideas. I'm looking at you making a fatal four-way for the NXT title, and then having a draw where they would wrestle next week. And the absolute... it was so dumb. And absolutely heartless storylines like Drake Maverick having to fight for his job, while dozens of his fellow released talent don't have that luxury. And on paper, Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher's fight pit feels like a desperate attempt to be creative in order to stay relevant against AEW's growing dominance over them. And, to my surprise, this match was way better than it had any right to be. It's the closest thing WWE feels like it would have to a proper Bloodsport match, with two guys that have plenty of grappling experience, Riddle's MMA and Thatcher's catch-as-catch-can, as there's plenty of gritty and grueling submissions and strikes. Everything here is so spiteful, from how Thatcher will sink in a heel hook only to kick at Riddle's back to get into position, to the shocking display of violence the way Riddle kicks Thatcher's teeth out of his mouth in a spot so expertly done. I truly believed that Riddle had kicked his teeth out of his mouth. The image of the doctors checking in on Thatcher's mouth as he bleeds profusely forever lives in my head. Riddle is fiery here, going for knockouts as he peppers Thatcher with stiff kicks and slaps, and Thatcher going for submissions with heel hooks and rear naked chokes. But there's plenty of creative offense here as well, as the cage gets a lot of use the way Riddle uses it to bounce off of for his Showtime kicks and hitting a floating bro from the top of the cage, and Thatcher using it as a strategic advantage when he holds Riddle in a heel hook, He drapes him over the cage so the blood pools to his head as he squeezes the leg in. In the end, it's a simple strategic rear naked choke that puts Riddle out, but not before one hell of a fight trying to get him off. This match just rules. It's stiff, uncompromising, genuinely shocking in parts, and it's a perfect send-off to Matt Riddle, and one hell of a way to put over Timothy Thatcher.
It is adrenaline pumping match. It's
only like 11 minutes long too.
Yeah, it's exactly what I want it to be, but it was surprising because it's not what I thought it was going to be either. Weirdly enough, just the commitment to that MMA catch as can style is just very foreign to NXT and WWE as a whole, that it really made it a lot sweeter to watch.
It works. It shockingly worked because in your mind you're like, oh, this is the Lions Den match from SummerSlam 1998, and it's absolutely not. It's just not. It's awesome for that. So, going forward, Cherry, tell me, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is Sami Zayn versus Cesaro at TakeOver Arrival.
Hell yeah, tell me about it.
We start off at an equal vantage point, demonstrating that Cesaro has the initial advantage in power and technicality, but Sami plays it off well as he counters most anything Cesaro gives to him. The control would seem to switch after Zayn's big dive, but Cesaro hits a wild backbreaker reversal, and then he decides to start tossing Zayn around the outside of the ring. It's another reminder that Zayn is not the driver of this match. After countering Cesaro's attempts to throw Zayn's left knee into the ring post, Sami attempts his signature running corner tornado DDT, but Cesaro throws up an uppercut that absolutely destroys Sami, and then just like that, Cesaro's right back in control. He wears down the knee as Sami effectively sells and tries to fight back, but it's to no avail. Zayn manages to get Cesaro onto the outside. He tries to hit his signature apron moonsault, but Cesaro catches him into another power slam on the outside. Eventually the cycle breaks when Sami's able to hit his corner exploder suplex and Blue Thunder Bomb, and a Koji clutch gets applied, but it's reversed into a stretch muffler, applying more pressure to that knee. It's a brief struggle for control until Cesaro hits a disgusting foot stomp onto Sami's head that just squashes his lips into the mat. The adrenaline starts to wear off after Cesaro launches a barrage of strikes onto him, but Sami refuses to give in. I love his lifeless selling that Zayn has. After each strike in this sequence, he just falls harder and harder to the floor. It really communicates how much he's been through, but his willpower is enough to get him onto his feet and counter Cesaro into a German suplex. The two reverse finishers, and Cesaro kicks out of another signature move, the Swiss Death, but to total disbelief. Sami kicks out at one, out of pure goddamn instinct. Cesaro is shocked, and Sami hobbles to his feet, shaking with adrenaline. He's clearly just working off the last vestiges of adrenaline that are flowing through his body. The sounds of Cesaro's wails come through as an uppercut and a neutralizer prove enough to finish off Zayn. Sami earns Cesaro's respect after putting up a hell of a fight, with a hug and words of encouragement, but soon enough, that's not going to be enough to satisfy Sami Zayn.
I think one of my favorite things about going back to watch Sami Zayn matches are just like the little ways that he'll sell. Because not like the way he shows pain is so interesting, because if you look at the way he gets hit, he'll do this thing with his legs where he like widen his stance to keep himself from falling over. He does this a lot in the match with Samoa Joe, and he does it a lot in this match here. And it just really sells like how committed he is to the fight, that his body may give up, like his mind refuses to.
Yeah, and I love just how they play with this sort of structure in the match where Sami never gets to fully be in control. Like we see it in the Shinsuke match. Shinsuke's mostly dominant in that match, but there will be those times when Sami gets to show off more. But every single time I kept noting it in the Cesaro match, he would get a bit of fight back in, and then Cesaro would just crush him down and stay on top of him forever. And it really drove home just the willpower Sami Zayn has and how effective he is at communicating that, and I think that's what in part makes him such a fantastic babyface.
Yeah, like we could gush about Sami Zayn all day, but I'm sure we're gonna get to that
don't
somewhere.
Don't tempt me.
Or don't tempt me, but I'm sure we'll get to that later on in the list.
Exactly. What is your next one up, Andos?
All right, so my number 6, Johnny Gargano versus Aleister Black, NXT Takeover War Games 2. So this match just fucks. Plain and simple. A mile-a-minute spot fest that displays some of the best striking capabilities of both men. The sheer and intensity of the strike both men deliver are so spiked. Gargano being able to match Black blow for blow, and Black is able to keep up with Gargano's constant speed. I find myself just going, wow, multiple times over just how hard these two are going at each other. There's not a single rest spot. Everything exists to further the story of the two men who just want to destroy each other. The knees Black hits Gargano with, you could make a religion out of. One in particular, where after Gargano spikes him with a reverse Rana, Black just sails across the ring to brutally deliver a running knee. And another, as Gargano is going for a tope suicida, Black just leaps like 3 feet in the air to hit him with a knee. That never fails to make me jump out of my chair. Gargano is also a pretty good heel here, attempting to play mind games by lifting Black up by his foot, begging Black to finish him off before rolling him up as a trick, taking joy in the violence he delivers to Black. There is melodrama here, and some of it may be a bit over the top, with Johnny screaming, "You're not the chosen one! I am!" Or Black going, "Come on, John, hit me with your best shot." But it never takes away from the sheer intensity both men display. They just beat the hell out of each other, behooving the narrative of two men who just straight up hate one another. The ending is also one of my favorite endings to a match, as a defeated Johnny lays unconscious on Black's chest after eating a black mass, only for Black to hold him and proclaim, "I absolve you of all your sins," before laying him out with one last black mass. If speed kills, then these men should be locked away.
That's awesome. Oh, it is such an awesome match. But one addendum I will add, I had first had a similar reaction with that cheesy like line from Alistair where he's like egging on Johnny. But honest to God, I found a bit of a like there's like a narrative reason why he would do that, like just trying to egg Johnny on and to play to his hubris to try. Like it's a corny thing to say, but I think he showed that it's enough to get under his skin and to get him to rush at him as hard as he can possibly do. Right. So I feel like in that sense, I felt there was like a justifiable reason for that to happen.
Right, like I said, it doesn't bother me too much because obviously it's number 6, but just kind of something that if you don't like melodrama, like it's gonna be here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But oh god, this match is so good. Like,
so good.
And being drunk watching this match is an experience too, because like when he hits him with that knee, I like exploded out of the bed. My girlfriend's like, "Are you okay?"
That's
are you
amazing.
Okay,
I mean, come on. It's like, well, you're sitting there like, do you see what I'm watching right now? Are we watching the same thing?
Right. No, she was losing her mind too, but it was like, damn.
No, yeah, for sure.
So here we are. We're at the top 5. We're still alive at the top 5.
Finally.
Cherry, I am so hyped to hear what your number 5 is.
Undisputed Era versus Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch.
Yep.
I mean, I made an entire video about this, so I'm not really going to go too hard into it than what I've already explained before. This match is sweaty. I get exhausted. It is adrenaline filled. These guys beat the hell out of each other. I've hardly seen Oni Lorcan slap someone harder than I have when I see the sweat pop off of O'Reilly's skin in this match. It is just, at first, seemingly more traditional, and then that frenetic chaos they get into in that last half gets me every time. But still, probably, like you had mentioned before, my favorite part of this match is how Oni Lorcan gets tagged in and he goes from boos to wild cheers in one sequence. Still don't think I've ever really seen that happen before. Just on a complete 180. I love this match. I love Oni Lorcan. This match just fucks.
100% agree. One thing I want to mention too as an addendum to Oni Lorcan is there's a spot where I think Kyle O'Reilly like kicks him in the face or gives him a forearm, and the look that Lorcan gives him is
I remember
good.
pointing that out. I was like, that is the, like, if you don't see that and you don't feel something, then clearly you're just never going to be an Oni Lorcan fan, because he just grits his teeth, and my favorite part is he just allows O'Reilly to lock in a guillotine because he's such a fucking madman that he's not going to give up control even if it means he's going to be like vulnerable to O'Reilly. Oh, it's so good.
Also, Another addendum to that slap is if you ever want to see Oni Lorcan really lay in his strikes, watch his match with Karrion Kross. He beats the fuck out of him.
Sweet. That I will have to check that out.
Like at one point he slaps him so hard that like blood vessels immediately show up.
That's fucking amazing.
It's great. It's probably Karrion Kross's best match in NXT.
Alright, well, now I have at least one Karrion Kross match I can feel like comfortable watching. But we're not here to talk about Karrion Kross. Or maybe we are. I guess you're gonna have to prove me right or wrong.
So at number 5 on my list, this is a big one. This is the match that pretty much established NXT as what it was before and what it is now. When you think of NXT, this is probably the match you're thinking of, and that is Sami Zayn versus Adrian Neville, NXT Takeover, our Evolution. Like I said, the biggest match in NXT so far in the company's lore, as both competitors really let both men know how invested they are. Commentary, I think we don't really talk about commentary in our matches, but here, commentary really does a good job laying out the motivations and headspace both competitors are in, noting how much they dislike each other, and how the advantage will go to the person who loses the mental game first. It's such a gradual build, and Neville knows damn well how emotional Zayn is, baiting Zayn into big moves and frustrating Zayn by purposely staying on the outside of the ring to blow his momentum. Slowing the pace allows Neville to make Zayn play the long game, removing his pace and explosivity, but Zayn equally is able to frustrate Neville by kicking out of everything that Neville throws at him. The match does a great job at building and building and building emotional release, where the more each man gets frustrated by the other, the more the drama and chippiness between the two gets. There's a moment where Zayn goes for a dive that's so incredibly satisfying, as Zayn tries first but gets reversed into a head scissors, and when Neville attempts a similar dive, Zayn reverses that and is able to hit a dive of his own. It works so well because it fits into the story of both men trying to outdo the other and emotionally bait the other into making a mistake, that when Zayn is able to capitalize on Neville's riskiness, he makes him pay for it. Also, excellent spot where Zayn catches Neville into a cartwheel and plants him with a beautiful Blue Thunder bomb. I think for that reason, that both men know each other so well, that the near falls feel so much more important, especially since there's so much on the line for both men, highlighted by the strike exchange where they have late in the match, where the emotions just flow out of both men as they reverse each other's finishers. The reversal of the red arrow into Koji clutch is so exciting as well. The spot where Zayn accidentally knocks out the ref and the crowd loses their mind to him showing sympathy really highlights how invested the crowd is, knowing that giving Neville every opportunity to take advantage, which in turn makes the near fall of the super kick so tense, as that could have easily finished the match. Of course, there's the part where Zayn has the title, and I just love the drama of it. It's so well earned because Zayn's entire career in NXT has been winning his own way without sacrificing his morals, and when he decides to throw the title away, it adheres so well to the ethos of his character that he prefers to win the right way than the smart way. And when Zayn finally sets up that haluva kick and you just see it in the face that he has, oh my god, I get goose. The finish of this match rules so much, as the ace of NXT finally gets crowned.
Holy shit, this match.
Mm-hmm.
It is so deserving of being perhaps their biggest match to this date.
And what I love so much is that it's so simple. It has a pace that's slow, but like it slowly grabs you the more intense and chippy it gets. Like once those strike exchange fall, it's like, oh my god, they're really going at it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I want to say more, but I will have to restrain myself.
All right. So, as we get further down, because I don't want you to restrain yourself, let's go to number 4. Cherry, what is your number 4?
Andrade versus Gargano at TakeOver Philly. It's one of the big matches. It's everywhere. And, I mean, I'm not going to deny, it's a fantastic match. But I think something that really stood out for me is the structure of the match. Andrade definitely plays off the dominant heel and Gargano's the sympathetic babyface. However, something I noticed is that Andrade seems to be very direct and he takes initial control before Gargano is able to work his way back into a dominant position. Like Gargano has plenty of time and spots where he himself is on top, but it just never lasts long enough. I think this establishes a sympathetic angle for Gargano, but this way it still gives him enough fight in the game to make this match more of a struggle to be the best between two great wrestlers than it is a dominant champion and a scrappy babyface or like some sort of David and Goliath affair. They play off that all the way to the end, building it bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think this was still around the time when Gargano was better at pacing his matches and he was better at knowing when to hit certain moves and when you want to reserve your big moves if you want to have the sort of spot fest 30-40 minute match affair. This may have been one of the last we ever saw before that structure really undid who Gargano was. And I love that it takes so long before Zelina Vega even feels the need to get involved in the match. It's not until they really start expending themselves and the two just get exhausted in fighting each other before Vega decides to try and turn it over into Andrade's favor, which results later in Candice getting involved and throwing them out of the ring before it's just the two facing each other off. And I really thought there were way more signature near fall spots than there were, but the Gargano escape doesn't get pulled out till late in the match. Andrade only hits one of his DDTs before he gets the win with that top rope DDT, and it's gonna put over his finisher, puts over Andrade, but man, it is a struggle for these two to get there, and they put on one hell of an affair with honestly way too many spots for me just to sit here and point out.
There's so much I want to say about this match, but I would spoil its placement. But I think what's interesting about this match, now that you talk about it, is I rewatched it during like early in my retrospective, and I first didn't get it. I was kind of like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah.
But I think the more I kind of like watched it and watched it and watched it, I was like, oh no, this is a really good pace. The really brutal stuff comes at the right times. Gargano is really effective as a babyface here, and I think what you nailed perfectly is that afterwards Gargano would do nothing but be in 30-40 minute epics, but how this match is structured is so well paced and it doesn't go over the top. It keeps itself grounded enough to where like Gargano is a really good fighting babyface, but he never like turns into John Cena.
Yeah, it nails that sort of balancing act where I was like, oh no, this is still Gargano's style, and he's still doing a lot and whenever he gets a spot to shine, but he's keeping it held back just enough to the point where the tension's never lost on me. And I just think after that, he just really starts forgetting how to balance that tightrope. Given all that, what's your number 4, Andos?
Number 4 is a match that, first off, shout outs to Nova, because I wanted to go back to this match to see if it was as good as I remembered it. Not only was it as good as I remembered it, but it got better and better and better the more I watched it. And that's Asuka versus Ember Moon, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 3.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Damn. Goddamn. This is great. It's a match that's consistently in motion, constantly moving a story, and reaches such cathartic heights. This is the best performance of Asuka's entire NXT run. Maybe WWE run, but either way, every great quality of Asuka is on display here. Her strikes and emotions are on top form, but it's her ability to get so much depth and ingenuity from working a limb that her control segments are never dull, and in certain moments are just downright mean with how rough the stomps to Moon's head and shoulders are. Equally, Ember puts on the performance of her career, showing such incredible fire. She launches herself at Asuka with high-risk moves and sells the arm well as she builds and pays off hitting the Eclipse. The moment that she did had me on the edge of my seat, cheering. Putting away Asuka feels less like a victory and more like a prophecy she needs to fulfill. The more emotional and distraught she becomes as she kicks out more and more of offense. It occasionally lapses into the over-the-top section, but it's that feeling of frustration that makes Moon's desire to become champion feel all the more personal. Asuka equally becomes more desperate the way she pulls in the ref to prevent the Eclipse like in Orlando, or how she reacts to the ref catching her pulling Moon's tights for a cheap win. And when Asuka finally locks in the Asuka lock, it feels so well earned as the fight made the title feel so much more important, especially in an arena that's treated her so well like Brooklyn. Hands down my favorite women's match in NXT, and another example of the women making the process of stealing the show at Brooklyn look easy.
So perfectly well said.
Man, I'm just gonna say it right now, I don't care if I'm a simp, Asuka rules.
Asuka, no. Asuka rules. She may not be appearing in every other spot in either of our lists, but Asuka has this quality to her that puts her far and above most others. Like, I can't think back in the last, well, maybe besides a couple. Like, I can't think of like, oh, Asuka's having, I know she's gonna have like a match of the year every year. She might not, but I know she is going to be consistently one of the most entertaining wrestlers that I can choose to watch.
I just love her emotions, I love her intensity, I love her look, I love her entrance, the way that she comes down to the ring like a Dark Souls boss, I love the way that she kicks, just everything about her on another level from like most women's wrestlers, that she can have chemistry with literally anyone. You can be Becky Lynch, it can be Sasha Banks, it can be Bayley, it can be against Bianca Belair, and like, she's going to give you one of the best matches of your career.
Yeah, she's a wrestler who, when you see her, she has so much gimmick to her. Like, just from the entrance, just from, like, the mannerisms that you're just like, okay, wow. And not only does she hold it up in the ring, but she adds a lot of depth to each of those elements. The way she walks, the way she emotes, the variety of expressions she'll give off, it's just so fulfilling to watch her wrestle.
Anyway, that's enough Asuka simp hour. What I want to know is, I'm simping for your number 3.
Well,
Cherry, what is your number 3?
I know you're simping for my number 3, because the Asuka simp train's gonna keep rolling. My number 3 is Asuka versus Ember Moon, goddammit.
Let's go!
These two bring it. Asuka brings this measured, hard-hitting approach, and Ember just embraces, like, if I have any chance to beat Asuka, I'm gonna throw my entire body into her. This match does not let up. The combination of strikes and athleticism is fantastic, but the key is always Ember's speed. She kicks so much ass. Well, I guess both women kick so much ass in this match. Nothing ever feels forced, nothing ever overextends itself, everything feels just right. Every near fall hits harder and harder the longer the match goes on. I can't get over, like, when I watch this match, I feel like this is the match both of these women have been wanting to have this whole time, where they can throw everything at each other, and to have it be pulled off this well is fucking amazing. It's my favorite women's match in NXT. I could rewatch this thing every other day and not get tired of it.
Don't know what else I could add other than yes.
Just yes.
Just yes.
So let's not waste any more time. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain, NXT 7/11/2018.
Classic stuff.
The best NXT television match of all time, and the most heartbreaking match in NXT's canon. This tiny, 500 Full Sail crowd is electric the entire time, feeling like it's 3 times its size with how much investment and excitement that emanates from this bout. Mustache Mountain are a house of fire in the opening minutes, but it's strong, dropping Trent Seven's knee into the ring steps that dramatically alters the pace of this match, and it's a pace that the Undisputed Era thrives in. Vicious is the perfect word to describe the UE here, working Severn's knee to an absolute science. It's some of the best legwork I've seen in NXT. Every denial of a tag from Severn to Bate feels like a heart stab as the Undisputed Era drags Severn away, further and further grinding away and ripping at the tendons of Severn's leg. It makes the ensuing hot tag feel like a bomb dropped on Full Sail, as Bate is a machine gun of offense, including a really fun airplane giant swing combo. But when it comes to Trent wanting to get back in, I love the genuine apprehension, as he knows that if Trent comes in, it would be the very last time. Bate puts in an excellent babyface performance here, shouldering the burden of the team as long as he can. And in fairness to Trent, he's able to get in decent offense on the Undisputed Era, including a 7-star lariat, but once Strong chop blocks Severn's leg, it's all over. It's death by 1,000 cuts. But it's that heart in Severn to never give up despite his leg being torn to shreds by the Undisputed Era is what makes the finish so heartbreaking, as forced with either winning the match or having his best friend career ended, Bate opts to throw the towel in to save Trent's leg and hand the Undisputed Era the Tag Team Championship. The best NXT TV match of all time, and the finest performance in the Undisputed Era's entire tag run.
What more can you say? It's a goddamn wrestling match. If you need one that's gonna pull out some of the best limb work and how to do limb work well, it's this one. You gotta recommend it.
And what I love about that ending is that it's so unconventional. You always think of oh, the team's not gonna give up, they're not gonna throw in the towel. Like, he throws it, and it's
Yeah.
like this crushing reality of, no, there are things way more important than being champion.
Yeah, and not just that, but I love when Bate is just like, he's beside himself looking around the crowd, and you just hear Trent is screaming at him not to do it. He trades between like telling him not to give in and just screams of pain, and it really like puts that mindset of Bate into you, where it's just like, oh, I don't know, what should be done? I don't know what to do. And then, as you said, you have to realize that there's just more important things. And it was a shocking match when I first saw it. And I hadn't seen something like that. Not since on WWE television.
Right. I remember watching that match for the first time in 2018 too, and being like, whoa, like the air just got sucked out of the room. Like, that's not how that's supposed to happen.
So what now, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like, what do we do now? But I know what we're going to do right now. Let's hear what your number 2 is, Cherry. Cherry, what is your number 2?
Number 2 is William Regal versus Cesaro.
Whoa.
11/21/2013. The pre-match promos are absolutely excellent. I would not have known about this match if you hadn't shown me that promo from Regal. Cesaro's promo is one that I liked a lot when I watched the full episode, because he actually goes through a little story detailing how him and Regal had actually grown to know each other. Regal helped him out in his career, but ultimately he knew that it was going to come to a day when these two had to look each other in the eyes, and Regal had to accept that Cesaro is the better version of himself. On its own, it's not the most standout promo in the world. It's nothing that unique that I haven't heard before, but it's the added context of Regal's promo, where he just sort of accepts it in a way I haven't seen the same way before. He just accepts that, yeah, Cesaro's better than him, and the more he talks, you can tell he's less accepted this reality and just trying to convince himself of it, that he really got in his own way and he couldn't be everything that he wants himself to be, but he sees Cesaro as being, and he just hopes that he can go out with dignity. And so when we get to the match, we see Cesaro outmatches Regal on absolutely every level, from technical prowess to striking power to athleticism. There are sequences all over this match where all of this is demonstrated. Regal still has his wits, and he does get in some good shots here or there, and even a comeback, which is really satisfying to see, but Cesaro is the younger and hungrier version of himself. All this is emphasized in the conditioning of his body and the pain tolerance between the two. Cesaro nails Regal with a nasty foot stomp to the head, and Regal looks to be unconscious. His lips flattened against the mat. It kind of scared me seeing how nasty the foot stomp was and just how Regal sold it, like he had just died right in front of me. But then we get this really beautiful, touching moment where seeing the broken body of Regal is the key to bringing Cesaro back down to the reality of the situation. He's not sitting aside, being smarmy, mocking Regal, asking him to give him more, because this isn't a friendly contest between two friends anymore. He really struggles to put him away, and Regal at this point is unable to even put up a fight. We see that this isn't what Cesaro wanted. Beating a defenseless Regal is far too depressing. He attempts to lift him for the neutralizer, but Regal collapses back down again, and Cesaro just stands there staring at the lifeless body of Regal, and you just see the cogs turning in his head. And it's a moment that actually brought me to tears. Maybe even the first moment in all the time I've watched wrestling that I've actually been brought to tears watching two friends now realize that they have to put each other down. And I think the real tragedy of it all is this isn't what Cesaro wanted. He doesn't want to beat Regal into submission. He wants to let him go out with dignity. It isn't until Regal showed that he was willing to fight to the end that Cesaro was given the permission to put him away and knock him down with dignity. Cesaro plays all of this with a proper level of aggression and smarminess, while Regal showed us some really great selling. He had such a desperation in this match, pulling out any and every stop that he knew, pulling out anything and everything that he could to try and win one over on Cesaro, even if you could just tell by his face that it was just pure desperation and he knew what the final outcome was going to be. He had to put up a fight if he could accept himself and go into retirement. In the end, this was the most shocking match that I watched so far.
Wow. I feel bad for putting this in my honorable mention.
Oh god.
Shit. But no, like, I don't think I could add anything to that write-up that would make it any better. It's the right opponent, it's the right moment, it's the right story. Everything about this match just feels right.
Exactly. It's at the moment, with how high I am on it, it might be my favorite retirement match.
Oh, hands down. I'm trying to think, are there any other retirement matches that even come close?
I can't think off the top of my head. I'm sure there's definitely some contenders out there, but I don't need to talk about contenders. I just need to know what your number 2 is.
My number 2 is a match that I kind of went back and forth on, where it was like, it's fine, I like it, but I don't think I love it. To where the more I watched it, the more I was like, yeah, no, this is genuinely as good as everyone says it is. And that's Johnny Gargano versus Andrade, NXT Takeover Philadelphia. So right off the bat, I just want to say, I love Johnny Gargano. Like, there was a time period from like 2017 to 2018 where he was hands down my favorite wrestler in the world. Like,
Same.
Something happened where like Triple H slipped him drugs or something, and he's just never the same.
I think he just got carried away.
He did. Whether that's his fault or not is debatable.
Oh, yeah, sure. I wouldn't say that.
It's on this night right here where he puts in the best single performance of his entire NXT run. I think what I forget most about is how stiff and hard-hitting this match was. The strikes both men lay into each other really look good. Gargano's forearms and kicks have a fire to them that really excites the crowd. He also displays some of the best selling of his career, as the longer the match goes, the more exhaustion he's able to display. Particularly in a later strike exchange where after unloading a punch or forearm, he takes time to really sell the amount of energy and effort it took to dispense it, making the crowd really sit on every single struggle he has to hit successful offense despite how laborious his efforts are. He's able to be extremely sympathetic and believable the way he's able to keep coming, but also makes the damage feel believable as the ref worries and pleads with Johnny to stop the match if things get too serious as the match continues. Andrade, though, might be even better as a heel. He's so vicious the way he works the neck and head of Gargano, stomping it into the ring apron, slamming it to the back of the ringside LED, and crushing it against the ring post with running double knees. Vega also is really great here too, taking advantage of ref's distractions to attack Johnny, which eventually builds up to Candice defending Johnny to chase Vega away. It's an extremely entertaining moment that pays itself off to lead to Johnny really feeling like he could win this. The final Gargano escape is so cathartic as every moment feels closer and closer to finally putting away his rival, but in the end, Johnny at TakeOver is Johnny at TakeOver. Defeat is so crushing here as everything felt right. Everything Gargano did was perfect, but it just wasn't his night. Especially when Ciampa comes out to lay Gargano out with a crutch. Overall, I just love this match so much. Everyone plays their role perfectly. Johnny is so fiery and sympathetic as he attempts to win his third attempt at beating Andrade, and Andrade is so vicious and desperate to stop Gargano. My favorite NXT title match of all time.
God damn, do I agree with it.
But I wonder if I agree with your number 1 pick, Cherry.
Well, you don't, but that's okay. I know I'm right, so I don't really care. My number 1 is Neville versus Sami Zayn. The big match. The most important match in NXT history. Here it is, the climax of Zayn's initial babyface run. Sami has never won the big one, and in his fights with guys like Cesaro, he has shown that he has the willpower to go the distance, and he will even gain the respect of many of his opponents. But because of either a lack in killer instinct or his empathetic nature, the thing that sets him apart from others and has in part made him so lovable also might be the thing that holds him back. We see this mentioned pretty explicitly in the promo before the match. He slaps Neville and blows up at him, shouting that he will be winning. While this newfound passion might be what he needs to overcome Neville, it also seems to just come more from a place of internal frustration. The question remains, how far is Zayn willing to go to get the job done? Neville is basically the summation of chaotic good. By all means, he's a respectable athlete. He is always composed and impressively fluid in his in-ring work. But when the chips are down, Neville is willing to go the extra mile, even if doing so bends the rules of the match, or his role as a babyface champion. Zayn has always had exceptional ring work, but he's so far stuck in the other direction of being a pure babyface that it has cost him bigger opportunities. The crowd is firmly behind Zayn, and the stare-off in the initial beginning of the match gives us a nice degree of tension to start. And those roles show themselves before they've even touched. Zayn comes at Neville stomping and grabbing at air. He feels rushed, impatient, and anxious. While for Neville, this is just like any other match. He's been here 100 times, and he is as composed as ever. They exchange rest holds, and Neville remains on top. Zayn attempts multiple times to escape, but Neville carries through and drops him right down to base every single time. Right when Zayn escapes and tries to get something in on Neville, Neville rolls through, wagging his finger in Sammy's face. We see this all escalate at a slow plotting pace, but offers a lot in terms of depth. There's so many fun exchanges, there's so many great moves that they share between each other that the escalation of tension just gets tighter and tighter and tighter, all the way up until Sammy tries to attempt to hit his Kaluva kick once again, but he's cut off again by Neville. Neville goes for the red arrow, but Zayn gets his knees up and locks in the Koji clutch. Sammy's face is bursting red, and you can read the desperation off of him. A roll up by Zayn is kicked out of, but Neville lands on the referee. Zayn checks on the ref and gets hit with a super kick poison Rana combo out of nowhere. Close 2 count. Awesome stuff to see, and it reminds us of when his compassion has cost him previously. But Zayn was able to preserve this time. Despite his flurry of negative emotions, Sammy at this point has still been unwilling to compromise himself. We get some snug forearms evaded, but ultimately he gets 2 German suplexes and 1 half-and-half suplex. He goes for the Haluva kick, and you guessed it right, Neville evades it. But what isn't evaded is the ring post tornado DDT, a move that was commonly reversed throughout a lot of Sammy's big matches. He finally hits the Haluva kick in the ring, but Neville pulled the ref in to share the impact, and buys himself some time to recoup on the outside. Knowing Zayn will be way too preoccupied with assisting the ref, Sammy cuts off Neville from using the title as a weapon. Then Zayn grabs the title himself, knowing full well he'd have a perfect opportunity to use it. Embrace a move that would guarantee victory, but compromise everything else he's built so far. He ultimately can't decide, and Neville tries for a pin, to which is unsuccessful. Then we get the final Haluva kick, and we get this amazing shot of Zayn's face, completely washed over with no shame, guilt, anxiety, or desperation. He is simply emotional and determined. He lunges forward and connects with the Haluva kick and wins the NXT title, proving that the path for those who wish to be steadfast in their person and morals is harder, but does not make it impossible to reach the pinnacle. Zayn and everyone else believed in him, and when he proved he could go the distance and make it to the finish line in his own way, victory became that much sweeter.
Goddamn, a really, really fantastic match. And as we reach number 1, I kind of just want to say that what makes NXT so, I guess, special to me when I watched it is the way that NXT is able to give extreme catharsis in the face of facing, failing, coming back again and again. And there are 3 matches that I think do this and hold up to the ethos of like NXT's beautiful moments like that. It's, like you said, Sami Zayn versus Adrian Neville at Our Evolution. It's Sasha Banks versus Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn. And the third one, my number 1, Team D.I.Y. versus The Revival, NXT Takeover Toronto. This is the single greatest match in NXT's entire history. The moment I finished watching this, I knew this was number 1. And while there was plenty of time to reanalyze, reevaluate all other matches, I really didn't think, in the end, anything yet came close. NXT at their peak is the home of some of the most cathartic victories in all of wrestling. The story their babyfaces go on and investment the fans give made for some of the most iconic moments in the brand's history. I call it the feel-good trilogy. In 2014, it's Sami Zayn winning the NXT title. In 2015, it's Bayley winning the NXT Women's title. And in 2016, it's D.I.Y. winning the tag titles. Ever since NXT picked up steam in 2014 and 2016, those years felt so special for NXT because each year was anchored by one division helping carry everything else with a babyface that was designed with very specific flaws. For Zayn, it was his emotions and good heart that cost him every single big match. For Bayley, it was the, oh, you're just a little girl and don't belong with us, while the other 3 horsewomen were feuding for the women's title. D.I.Y., it was that D.I.Y. were great as individual wrestlers, but their inexperience and failure as a team, not just in their loss at Brooklyn, but their loss in the Dusty Cup, putting more pressure on them breaking up. This was their last chance. D.I.Y. or die. And in Toronto, they would win or die trying. Everything about this match is borderline perfect. I love how this match builds upon the idea that Johnny is the weak link, as it gets worked over most of the match and is the one who falls to the first fall mere minutes into the match with the Shatter Machine. I love how the Revival distract the ref in this match as well as a callback to Brooklyn, where they tried to pull down a member of Team D.I.Y. to prevent a tag as Scott pulls Ciampa, but Scott gets the ref's attention by illegally running into the ring as Gargano tags Ciampa, but the ref didn't see it. Both members of the Revival beat the shit out of Gargano. Absolutely brilliant heel work, especially after the ref holds Ciampa back long enough for them to hit a heart attack on Gargano. In Canada. Awesome stuff. The Revival really do a good job of exposing the inexperience of D.I.Y, but it's that constant pressure on D.I.Y that makes their fighting spirit so strong. Also, what makes this match so compelling is that the trouble of D.I.Y being a team isn't that they can't get along or miscommunicate, it's that they lack the overall synergy the way that the Revival do in terms of being there for the other, the way that they hit tag team offense or save the other from being in trouble, which makes moments when they do connect all the more satisfying, as when the Revival go for tricks one too many times, it costs them as a second fall as both Ciampa and Gargano are right there at the right time to hit their finisher. By the third fall, all the story beats finally meet. The weakness of Johnny Gargano being the weak link, him overcoming being outmatched by Dawson and Wilder, and the Revival with them going to the well far too many times and cheating. As each fall just gets more and more intense, concluding with Johnny finally overcoming his weakness by getting Dash in the Gargano escape, and Ciampa running in to prevent Scott Dawson from breaking the submission and putting him in one of his own. Finally, D.I.Y come together as a team, and it's easily the most iconic finish in NXT history, as countless teams have ripped this spot off many times. Both Scott and Dash hold each other's hands to prevent the other from tapping, deciding to tap together. It's a poetic moment. Everything the Revival did was as a team, and if they're going out, they'll go out as a team. A beautiful defeat that emphasizes just how important the moment for D.I.Y was. Despite the setbacks, despite the losses, despite the inexperience, they are undeniable tonight. If you're gonna do it right, you better damn well do it yourself.
Absolutely well said. Makes me like the match 10% more than I did before.
And one thing I didn't mention was there's this amazing moment. For as much as we shit on Kevin Dunn for being a director with his shots, there's this, I'm never going to forget this shot. There's a shot where Gargano is in the heel hook and he just stares at the ropes. And, like, the camera stays on him the entire time. He's just screaming and screaming and he finally grabs it and it's such a great moment.
Oh yeah. Dunn is someone who on the general regular day can go anywhere from bland to annoying. But when he gets it right, he really gets it right.
He nails that shot. And even the end too, where both of them refuse to tap out and they both tap together. Iconic moment. One of the all-time great moments in NXT. You know what, Cherry?
What?
It's a lot of really, really damn good matches.
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
some of the best matches in NXT history. But
you know, I would agree with that.
But I think there's one match that is the complete polar opposite that I think we need to talk about.
Oh, really? And what might that be?
Well, you see, Cherry, it ends here. It all ends here. It ends here with one final beat.
Oh, God. No. I'm not ready yet. I can't talk about this match. It's too much.
Oh, it's 45 minutes of too much.
Oh. It's the peak. This is the real peak of NXT right here.
This is the pinnacle. Everything we just said, throw it into
Fuck
the trash
all of
can.
it. Garbage. Now we're going to talk about the most based match in NXT history.
We're playing fourth dimensional chess with big brain energy here, guys.
We're on levels previously unknown. This shit is straight bananas.
So, how do we start talking about one final beat?
I mean, it defies description. Okay, the fourth Ciampa Gargano match. I'm sure it's gonna be really bland, really melodramatic. I don't think anything could have prepared me for what I was watching, even though I've seen it half of it once before. The decision to have the empty arena and you can hear every footstep, every pant, every moan, everything. I would love to know who decided on that.
Probably Triple H.
Yeah, probably, but
So one thing I will say, so here's the thing about cinematic matches. By like their DNA, by their idea, because it's so unconventional, you kind of can't take them seriously. Like if you watch like the Final Deletion or the Boneyard match, like they're inherently silly, because the expectations of like going into a cinematic match isn't the way it's supposed to be, a regular wrestling match, they play this match so dead serious that it's even funnier than the goofier cinematic matches.
Oh, when you get to that third act, the last, like, I want to even say 10, 15 minutes, maybe probably longer, like, it is baffling how much they expect me to be invested in this match by this point. Like, with Candace coming in and nut-shotting Johnny and Tommaso shaking, and I can hear every trembling little breath that he has, and Johnny's just moaning.
I hate my husband, Tommaso.
And it's your fault. How do you feel about that? I'm like, oh my god. What? And I love that her yelling is still somehow like she's trying to put so much into it, and all I just hear is Johnny just What am I watching?
I think Joseph said it best. Joseph Montesillo, shout out to him, said it best when he was like, this entire match is like watching a genius rapper explain his lyrics.
That's a banger line. Holy shit.
Because Ciampa's like, we were brothers. Who will you replace me with? And Gargano's like, how many surgeries was it, Tommaso? Torn labrum? Torn ACL? And who can forget the neck? And he's like explaining everything.
I want to know if how much of it was like them trying to make up for the fact that it's just dead air besides that. Like, it's so awkward. It's so awkward watching this match that you do just the absurdity of it all breaks, and you have to laugh because you can't take it seriously, and you don't know how they expect you to take. I just started thinking about 5 minutes in, I'm like, is this a parody? Is this like some big troll by Triple H? Is he gonna come out with like Adam Rose and Noe Jose, and he's gonna give me the big reveal at the end? But no. They play this thing to the T, as straight as a knife.
Also, shoutouts to Drake, the referee, who goes, as Tommaso Ciampa takes like 5 minutes to remove the ring apron, like the ring fluff, and he's like, stop it, it's too far, there's no need to do this, how long have you known each other?
Those moments are great because it's what you hear every time there's like a backstage encounter. Like, it's all, or like, don't you love it when you're watching like a no holds barred match and he's like, come on, man, what are you doing? You can't do this. Right. It's like, what do you think we signed up for, bro? That moment's great. Because my buddy, I had to show it with me because I was like, I can't watch this alone. I need help. He'd never heard of this match before, and he was in tears. He could not physically handle what we were watching.
I gotta say though, my favorite part of the match is when they're outside, and like, for no reason to remind you that they're outside, they pipe in cicadas.
Why?
And then when they immediately go back in, it completely fades away. It's like, amazing. Why? What is this decision?
I love the when they get on that truck.
Oh,
the stomping on the truck, and they do that. It's one of my I don't know why. I don't know where this started. I only really see it heavily in WWE when there's two rivals and they start off with like forearms and they go to just these horrible slap punches. Like Pete Dunne does these all the time. They look horrible. I don't know why this is ever done, because nothing ever comes out of them than just trying to, I guess, build the drama. And it's even funnier watching it up there because their feet are moving around so much. You just hear the scuffling of the top of this truck as they do constant drone shots to try and make it feel more epic. They trade between the camera on the ground and the drone shots.
Oh god, yeah. What's funny about that drone shot too, that it's supposed to be this really like epic, serious showdown, but like the shot is so wide that you kind of just look at the bottom and Drake's just struggling to climb up the truck. Like,
It's an amazing match. Like,
it's great.
You did a Poketon video. We gotta do. You gotta do one of these, man. You thought that was a great comedy match. This is post comedy. Okay, this is something we've never seen before.
Something that takes itself so seriously that it lapses into pure comedy. Also, like, the camera shots, too, are so hilariously bad, because, like, there's a part where they're on the truck, and Gargano has him in the Gargano escape, and he releases him, and the camera, like, struggles to get Ciampa in frame. So, like, the last frame is, like, his head being on the farthest right-hand side of the screen. and it just like goes to the next shot.
Yeah, like well, I don't know what I was gonna say. What was he thinking? But I don't know what anybody was thinking in the making of this match.
So
Like,
I mean, look forward to the main event of WrestleMania next year being Johnny Gargano in a 16-minute Iron Man match with Tommaso Ciampa that ends in a draw and goes for an extra 10 minutes where the stipulation is whoever can climb the ladder and grab the crutch gets to hit the other one.
please, one more final beat. Please. I need it. One more final beat, Triple H. He's the top dog. He can do it. No one's going to stop him.
Second beat in a lifetime. That's what they should call it.
That's amazing.
Oh, man.
God.
What was more amazing was talking to you tonight. I had a great time talking about our top 20 matches.
Absolutely. There's nothing better. Like, not easy for me, but man, going back and just getting to kind of fall in love and remember why I hate so much of this part of wrestling was a really satisfying thing to do.
So real quick, do you want to go through our top 20s? Just speed run this?
Yeah, sure. You want to start?
Sure. So at number 20 for me, it's Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae at TakeOver Toronto. At number 19, Oni Lorcan versus Hideo Itami, NXT 6/28/2017. Number 18, NXT War Games match at TakeOver War Games. The Undisputed Era versus Burch and Lorcan, NXT TakeOver Chicago 2. At 16, Women's War Games match, TakeOver War Games 2019. At number 15, Walter vs. Ilya Dragunov, NXT TakeOver 36. Number 14, The Revival vs. Team D.I.Y, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. At number 13, Shinsuke Nakamura vs. Sami Zayn, NXT TakeOver Dallas. At number 12, Shayna Baszler vs. Kairi Sane at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4. At number 11, NXT North American Ladder Match at TakeOver New Orleans. At number 10, Sasha Banks vs. Bayley, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. At number 9, Bayley vs. Asuka, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Number 8, Sami Zayn vs. Cesaro, NXT TakeOver Arrival. Number 7, Matt Riddle vs. Timothy Thatcher, NXT 5/27/2020. At number 6, Johnny Gargano vs. Aleister Black, NXT TakeOver War Games 2. At number 5, Sami Zayn vs. Adrian Neville, NXT TakeOver Our Evolution. At number 4, Asuka vs. Ember Moon, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3. At number 3, Undisputed Era vs. Mustache Mountain, NXT 7/11/2018. At number 2, Johnny Gargano vs. Andrade, NXT TakeOver Philadelphia. And at number 1, Team D.I.Y. vs. The Revival, NXT TakeOver Toronto.
And for my top 20, we've got number 20 being Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne at TakeOver Chicago. At number 18, we have the Women's War Games at NXT TakeOver War Games 2019. At number 17, we have Matt Riddle versus Timothy Thatcher, Fight Pit. At number 16, Matt Riddle versus Roderick Strong at TakeOver 25. At number 15, we have Walter versus Ilja Dragunov at TakeOver 35. Number 14, Johnny Gargano versus Aleister Black at TakeOver War Games 2. Number 13, American Alpha versus The Revival at TakeOver The End. Number 12, Sasha Banks versus Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn. Number 11, Undisputed Era versus Mustache Mountain on 7/11/2018. At number 10, Baszler versus Belair versus Sane versus Shirai at TakeOver New York. Number 9, D.I.Y. versus The Revival at TakeOver Toronto. Number 8, Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn, TakeOver Dallas. Number 7, Sasha Banks versus Bayley at TakeOver Respect. Number 6, Sami Zayn versus Cesaro at TakeOver Arrival. Number 5, Undisputed Era versus Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch at TakeOver Chicago. Number 4, Andrade Cien Almas versus Johnny Gargano at TakeOver Philadelphia. At number 3, Asuka versus Ember Moon at TakeOver Brooklyn 3. Number 2, William Regal versus Cesaro, 11/21/2013. And finally, number 1, Neville versus Sami Zayn at TakeOver Our Evolution.
Great matches, fantastic matches, the best matches.
The best lists. The only lists that matter.
The only list that matters is mine. You're right.
You can think that, but it's fine because I never really valued your opinion in the first place.
Oh, I love you too, Cherry.
I love you too, Andos.
So, Cherry, tell everyone where we can find you online.
You can find me at CherryChase on Twitter, 2 C's on Cherry and Chase. You can find me on YouTube at CherryChase, obviously. And that's it for me.
All right. You know, you can find me. That's at AndosMan94 on Twitter. Look for Andos. And I am on YouTube, Andos, of course. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Well, it was an honor and a pleasure to join you in this retrospective.
It's always a pleasure working with you. And before we sign off, I gotta say, we are not your kind.
We are NXT.
Why?